In this Git course for beginners, Hitesh Chowdhury will break down the essentials of version control to help you manage your projects more efficiently. Hitesh is a very popular instructor, and in this tutorial, he will teach you the tools and techniques you need to get started with Git.
Hey there everyone, my name is Hitesh and welcome to the YouTube channel. I hope you are doing good, and let's get started with another series that I really wanted to bring for so long, but finally I got time to actually execute this. In this entire series, we are going to master Git and the associated services which are offered in the market. Some of them are quite popular and you might have heard about them, such as GitHub, Bitbucket, and there are plenty of others. Now, in this entire series and the upcoming videos, we'll be focusing on mastering the Git from both perspectives, the theoretical perspective as well as the practical perspective. Every year, there are thousands and thousands of engineers who walk into the domain of software engineering and realize that building a software is not that easy as it looks like. It requires a lot of patience, as well as a lot of tools are required to actually build these softwares. There are a lot of other engineers as well whom which you want to collaborate and work on a single software. And of course, there are days on which software works, and of course, there are days on which software doesn't work. And for these kinds of special situations, we need checkpoints so that we can go back in the time where things were working absolutely fine and we can just start from there again. It is almost like saving a game, just like we have checkpoints in the game, exactly like that we can have checkpoints in the software as well. This whole thing is known as version control system or the versioning system in the software industry. And I just really feel that every year thousands of engineers walks into this domain and want to really master this. A lot of tutorials which are recorded previously or years before, they look a little outdated. Of course, the technology is same, but of course, the delivery part, the content creation, the videos, they all need to upgrade from time to time. And this is exactly why I am recording this fresh series for all the engineers who are just getting started or want to learn Git. This is a fantastic series and you're going to absolutely love this one. Now, my goal is not to make sure that you memorize all the thousands and gazillions of commands which comes through the Git, but actually you understand the flow of how a software is designed and work along with me. The idea behind this series is not to understand 1,000 commands, but actually to understand how the workflow of a Git works when we actually design a software. What happens when things goes wrong? What happens when things goes great? And what's there inside and what's there behind the scene in the Git, which is all we want to learn. For this, we are going to use a mix of theory as well as practical. And yes, a lot of tutorials goes really heavy on the practical, but that is exactly the point where you miss the behind the scene detail of what happens behind the scene in the Git. What is there in that Git folder and how we can actually study it. This tutorial and this entire series is going to be a mix of all of it, and I'm pretty sure you're going to enjoy this. Now, in order to get started, you don't need too much. Now that you have the basics of what this all is going on, we need just a couple of software that we're going to talk about, and we will go through with the documentation. But as a preparation side, let me just share my screen so that I can walk you through that what all softwares we are going to need. First of all, about the notes. Yes, these are my handwritten notes that I've prepared, and we'll be walking through with these, that how things goes on. It's much more easier to teach in the classical style of pen and paper, and we will be doing that. But don't worry, we will also have the practical aspect of it. And for the practical aspect of it, we don't need too much of the softwares. I'll just tell you what are my favorite ones, and you can just pick whatever you like. And since Git is one of the things which I 100% still believe is a terminal first tool. There are a lot of GUIs as well, the GUIs, graphical user interface, but I still believe that you actually thrive in the industry of the Git via the command line. It might look daunting first, but it is not. It is absolutely easy to work with this. And for the terminal, I'm going to be using Warp. This is my default terminal these days. I'm actually absolutely loving this. The command line, it is something which is redesigned. Terminal was something which was never redesigned. And here's a good thing about it. The software, if you look at here, this one, it is available for Mac, it is available for Linux, and they are already working on Windows. So by the time you might be watching the video, there might be already a Windows version, and it is absolutely a charm. By the way, if you don't like it, you can use any terminal, but I'll be using this one. I find this much more easier to work on with. Apart from this, we'll be also using Visual Studio Code. That's it. That's going to be our code editor. The best part is we will not be writing any code at all, but still I highly recommend to use this one. This entire series is going to be language independent since we want to master the Git and not a programming language. So we will not be writing any programming language. We'll be writing just the text data so that we can understand what goes on, what goes behind the scene and all these details. So these are the two softwares that are going to be required for you, and that is all. That is all what you need to get started with this series. Now, one thing I would like to mention here, in the very next video, we'll go ahead, download the Git, and we'll walk you through a couple of documentation and what to avoid in that documentation. It is absolutely a jungle if you just walk into that. Now, apart from this, please make sure you understand Git and GitHub are two very different things. One is a service provider and one is a software in itself. Git is a software that we want to learn. And one of the services is GitHub. Of course, we'll go there and we'll deep dive into this one. But there are a plethora of other services available there as well. So make sure you understand the difference between them. And that's all the basics to get started. I hope that's a good introduction for you, what's about to come and what's going to be there in the series itself. That's it for this video. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one and just set up everything and let's get started and let's dive deep into the world of Git. Hey there everyone, Hitesh here, back again with another video and welcome to the series on the Git. So let's go ahead and get started finally with the Git and let me walk you through how we're going to deal with this entire thing. First, reminding you again that this series is not about memorizing every single command that's available with the Git, but of course to understand the workflow and some of the behind the scene details of how Git properly works. So it's going to be a mixed balance of the theory as well as the practical. And I highly recommend to follow along because you're going to learn so much when you type these commands with your own hands on the keyboard. It's a much better learning experience. So try them out. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me show you the setup of how we are going to proceed into this one. So this is where our browser lies, and we will not be focusing too much on the browser because majority of the things that we require or we need to understand, to study the documentation will be covered up in this video only. And from the next video onwards, we'll be focusing majorly on the terminal. Now, Git is available on the GUI platform as well, but I think the more you understand about the commands and how they work, the better you will be performing on those GUIs as well. On the other screen, we do have our handwritten notes here as well. They are so much better way of teaching the subjects. I still believe that. And this series is going to be a mixed balance of how to proceed, the entire flow of the series as well as the theoretical knowledge. I know a lot of you are a big fan of just show me the practical, but once you understand the behind the scene details, the learning journey is much, much better and you will be remembering it throughout your life. That's the experience I want to give you, that once you understand the Git from here, that's it, you are done for the lifetime. So coming back, first what we're going to do is we're going to go back onto this. So in order to get this, by the way, if you want to grab the terminal, the exact one that I'm using, it's warp. Again, common question that comes around. Now let's go on to the Git. So if you want to go and download the Git, the website is git-scm, the source control management software that we are going through. And this is the homepage that you're going to see. If you look at the download, it will automatically detect your system and will give the software for you. You can also click on the download and get the Mac, Linux or Windows version, whichever you like. Git is pretty easy to install. It's really simple. All you have to do is just open up the file and next, I agree, okay. That's all you have to do. And remember the one thing, that this is the software that you're installing. Just because you have installed the software doesn't mean that we are using the software. It's just the installation process, the learning of the software, how it works, that we're going to go through together. Also, you're going to see that on the home page, there is a documentation guide as well. Now, this is the most confusing part because if you click on the documentation and click on the reference manual, it looks like that, hey, it's a pretty small documentation, but it is absolutely a jungle. If you just look at the Git or even the Git config, you'll find that it is unreadable. It is so much of in depth and so much of the things. Yeah, look at the scroll bar on the right. Yeah, you got this one. So it is so much that it is almost impossible to go through with this. I don't call this as a documentation, it is more of a reference manual. Whatever you need is there, but it is almost impossible to learn from this documentation. This is more of a reference guide if you ever need to explore some things more. So answer is there, but it's not easy to find that. Now coming back, let's go ahead and on to this one. So first and foremost, I have created a folder where we're going to keep all of our learning materials and all of that. It's not really that big that I should give it to you via the GitHub account or something. It's really the text file. So first and foremost, I'm going to type the cd and we'll be going to a very specific folder. I'll just drag and drop this folder here. So it automatically picks up that folder. I'll go ahead and hit an enter. So now I'm into this folder. There is absolutely nothing into this one. Let's go ahead and create a couple of directories into this one. So you can see that mkdir, and we're going to call this one as git1. And we're also going to call this one as git2. And do we need 3 as well? Let's just go ahead and have this one. So now I have 3 folders inside this one, git 1, 2, and 3. Now assume these are just regular folder, no assumption, no techniques, nothing right now. Just a quick question. Do you think that the software that I've installed, Git, might be somehow associated with these folders? Absolutely not. It is not possible for them. That's exactly what I'm saying. Git is just a software. In order to make sure that Git tracks what's happening in these folders, I need to make sure I give it a command to track all of this. And maybe for some reason, I want to track Git1 and Git2 and not the Git3. There's also a possibility on that. So that's exactly what we're going to study in the notes part. So let me go through with this. So first of all, let me go ahead and walk you through with these all notes that we have. And this will help us to keep a track of all the things. First of all, let's assume and understand this major difference that Git is a software. It is just a software. And the GitHub is a service or a service provider, and they are very different. When initially you get started into the software journey, it is okay to assume that they are the same, but eventually you'll realize that there are many other service providers like Git. So whatever you do through the Git and you want to keep an online version of it safe somewhere in the cloud, that's what the GitHub is used for. And there are other services as well, like there's Bitbucket, which is pretty popular, and there are tons of others as well, which are not that popular, but they exist. Another thing, what does the Git actually does? What's the whole role? What's the point of it? I always say that assume that this is something like a video game. In the video game, you cannot clear the level on just one go. You need the checkpoints that, hey, I'm safe till now here, so if I restart the game, I want to be here on this point. This exactly happens in the version control system. It keeps the track of the file and the changes of that. So whatever the changes you have made, it marks a checkpoint there, and if anything goes wrong, you can just go back there. Not only that, that obviously is the priority of the software, but it also helps to work in collaborative environment. Maybe there are 100 people working on a software, maybe 2 people for this example. We can actually go ahead and work in collaborative environment. We're going to see that demo as well. Here is my learning path that I recommend everyone who want to learn the Git is get the basics first. You cannot just deep dive into this. I see a lot of people who just look at the 4 or 5 commands that are available on the GitHub while uploading the files and never ever does the deep dive in the Git. My recommendation is get the basics first and then use it in your daily life. Whatever you're doing, whatever the code you're writing, just use it daily. And then face the problem. This course will give you a very solid foundation, but you have to face your own problems and solve those problems via ChatGPT or the Stack Overflow, however you do that. That's the best way of learning the Git. Use it daily, face the problem. Now, I have covered a lot more than just the basics in this course, which is required for you, and that's why this note exists. But again, you don't have to worry too much, and obviously you will be facing some of the troubles which are outside of the course curriculum, so that's okay. Okay. Moving on. First of all, we need to understand some of the terminologies to go and dive deep into the Git ecosystem. The first terminology is known as repo, and it's a short form for repository, or we can informally call this one as just a folder. So yeah, that's it. A folder which contains a lot of software files is known as repository, and in the world of Git, we call it as repo. Repo is nothing. It's a Git on system versus tracking the repo. So there is a difference between having just the folder and some folder which are being tracked by the Git. So the very first command that we're introducing here, then we'll come back on the Git repo and not tracked files and all of that. The first command that we're going to learn is the git -- version. And there's a small thing about this command as well that I would like to walk you through. So if I go ahead and run this command that is git, you can run the -v as well, or you can run the -- version as well. And if I go ahead and hit an enter here, you can see that my version is 2.39.1. And if you see the online version of the Git which is available is 2.44. Now, what you need to understand is Git is a very, very reliable software. it doesn't ship out every next update on every next Monday, but whatever the version you have, anything above, let's just say 2.1 or something, you are absolutely fine. This software has never shipped the breaking changes, and I don't think so it will do in the future as well. Very reliable, very pleasant software to work on with this one. So the first command that we have studied is all just about the version. So this is what we get as the version system. All right, moving further down. Now here's an interesting diagram that we all need to track. So this is our major root folder, and in this folder we have created multiple folders. Consider this as Git1, consider this as Git2, and consider this as Git3. So as I've just mentioned, the software is installed in a system doesn't mean it's tracking everything. You need to mention it that this is my Git repo. This is my Git repo. Once you mention this and initialize your Git in that folder is particularly getting tracked. And the tracking of this folder can be totally independent from this folder. And also, if you haven't mentioned that this folder should not be tracked, that's it. It's never going to be tracked. Your software is not going to be interfering in that one. So this is the most important part onto this one. Now, let's go ahead and run and initialize a couple of folders. So we will learn that how we can make this entire source code or the folder as trackable. And we'll also find the status of this entire folder. You don't want to track everything in your computer. So we're gonna go ahead and learn about this. And then we'll come back onto these notes and talk about this hidden folder that we do have here. We'll just work on with this one. So let's go back onto this command line. And as I can see, if I go ahead and do a quick ls, I have git1, git2, and git3. Let's just say I want to track git1 and git2 and not the git3. First and foremost is you can always check what's the status of the Git. Now, I don't recommend to just initialize it outside where you don't want to track things. Go ahead and initialize the Git only where you want to track the things. So I can run the command like git status here as well. So git status, and it will surely give me that, hey, Fadl, not a Git repository. That's a good thing. It's not tracking the things here, and that's exactly what I want. If I go ahead and run the ls here, now let's go ahead and learn that how we can track a particular folder so that our software is activated in that folder. Let's go into the Git1. So let's go ahead into the Git1 folder. I'm currently into that. There is nothing inside it, and I can do an ls-la to see all the hidden folders as well. And as you can see, there is nothing inside it. Now, first of all, let's check. It's always a good habit. Make it your habit is to run the git status. This is a command which you should run often. So go ahead and make this a habit. It's okay. Now, the first command that we're going to learn about is initialize the Git software. The moment you do git init, which is a short command for initialization, just hit the enter, and now it will give you this kind of a response that, hey, using the master name for the initial branch, and we'll learn about the concept of branching and all these things in a matter a little bit later. But right now we can see it gave us some of the output. Now, the fun part is if I go ahead and check the Git status again, now it gives me different messages. It says that, hey, Git status on master branch, no commit yet, and nothing to commit. That's okay. We'll learn about these terminologies a little bit later. But one thing is sure that it's not giving me those error message, and this particular folder is now being tracked by the Git. And if I go a little bit back and do a quick ls, I can now say that the Git1 is a folder which is being tracked by the Git software, and these two softwares, no, they are not getting tracked at all. Let's go ahead and move on further into this, that how this actually happened. The whole thing is git status is to check the status of the Git software, and the git init is, by the way, this is always being run as one time per project. That's why I say I love these notes because it helps me to keep in track, and all the things which I want to share, the inner details, they never get missed out. So the git init command you always run only one time in a project. Once the Git folder is there and the initialization happens, you don't do again. You can keep on adding, deleting, removing files of your software, whatever you are doing. Keep on doing that, but you don't do git initialize again. What git initialize does is it creates a .git folder. Since the folder starts with the dot, it is hidden, but it's actually there. And it's a hidden folder to keep track of all of your files and folders and subfolders and subfolders. So you can go pretty deep into that. Now, when we do simply go into the Git1, we do an ls, we don't see it, but if I go ahead and do a simple ls-la, which is to show the hidden folders, we can see that this folder now exists. That's an interesting folder. And this folder requires a lot of theoretical knowledge to go into the depth of it. Why don't we start just here? Let's go into a .git and go up here, do a quick ls, and yep, there's so much in here. There's a head folder, there's a hooks, there's a refs, there's a config, info, description, object. And what you'll notice that these folders and all these structures, they are going to grow up as we bring more files into this folder. But you never ever go into this folder and do any changes manually. If you do that, risk is on you. The mess that you're going to create is totally on you. So what we're going to do, just to give you a brief idea, I can just go ahead and click on this, and I can command click on this, and I can open this folder just up here. So this is just a file. I'll just open this refs here. So all right, so this refs, and this opens up the refs. So you can see there is a head, there is a tags. Yes, we're going to discuss about the heads. Right now there's nothing inside it. There's nothing inside the tags. But yes, these are actual folders which actually keeps the track of it. Now, right now, I don't want to make any mess into this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out of this one and do a quick ls. Nothing is there. That's what we have as of now. Okay. Now this is looking good. Let's go ahead and understand a couple of working mechanism of the Git. Then we're going to create a couple of files into this, folders onto this one. We'll even open up our VS Code, and we'll start with that. But first, let's go ahead and understand the entire workflow. And once we are going to do the practical of the workflow, you'll understand it a little bit better. So you will also hear quite a lot about these commit statements. The commit statements are almost exactly like the checkpoints which happens in any video game that you have played in your childhood time, or even if you still do play just like I. So commit is something which is known as checkpoint. So in the world of software, we love to call them with different and unique names. So we call this as a commit. But if you call this as a checkpoint inside yourself, that's okay. That's going to be fine. The whole idea behind things is we write something into a directory, we add that, and we commit that. So there are a couple of more commands before you actually do the commits. You cannot just go ahead and write the commit directly. So this is where I have added this small diagram on the right side, which helps us to understand that how the workflow of a basic, very simple Git actually works. And we'll do this one as well in the next video as well. So the first is we have to make a working directory. The point of making a working directory is simply we have Git initialized there. We do have that folder now. After that, we have to run a command of git add, and this is not a complete command. We have to mention the file name here, or you can use a shortcut of dot to add everything. We'll work through with that. And that actually brings everything into the staging area. This means this is not yet committed. That means, yeah, this checkpoint. This checkpoint is not yet made, but this is known as something as staging area. That means, hey, I'm ready to commit some of the files. Then you simply go ahead and run the commit command, which is exactly this one. We are ready to make a checkpoint. Once you do the git commit command, then the repo is now onto a checking stage. Now, a lot of people, why they get confused with the Git and GitHub, because once the repo is created, it is kind of a very common that you push the entire thing, the whole thing that you have made along with the checkpoints and the source code, you want to push it onto some of the cloud provider or cloud Git provider, which is one of the GitHub. So that's where exactly the git push command works through. We will not be doing the push command yet. We'll want to understand the flow till here. So we have already created a working directory. Now we want to add those files and want to bring them onto the staging area. We want to discuss what the staging area is. And then we want to learn about the commit, that how do we actually properly make a commit and move it here. So this is our goal, how we go with that. So in the next video, we'll go through with this staging area, that how it works. But before that, we need to do some practical as well. So that we're going to do in the second part of the video itself. So I hope this entire thing was pretty useful, pretty fun, entertaining as well. Let's go ahead and catch up in the next video and go through with the staging area part. All right. Hey there, everyone. My name is Hitesh, and welcome back to the Git series. And welcome to the third part of it, or the third video. So in this video, we're going to be again going back. We'll do some of the practicals. We'll go some of the behind the scene again, one more time. This one is going to be a little bit more of a practical, tiny bit theory, and we're going to have some fun. So let me share the screen first and let me walk you through that what we are going to do in this video. So the whole idea is to understand this part of the system first, because obviously we will be going into the Git push and GitHub and all these things later on. But first of all, it is important for us that we understand this part of the thing. This is pretty nice actually. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a working directory. We're going to go ahead and work on the git add command. We'll go through the little bit details of it. We'll see what this staging area is, and then we're going to walk through with the commit, and we'll see how a repo or the repository or the folder looks like. And then we're going to have a lot more discussion about the commits or how this is being done. In order to walk through with this, again, we're still here. And if you just go ahead and look into the pwd command present working directory, we are in the git one. And at this point, we can just go ahead and check out the git status. This is the first command that you should always and always run in every folder to check out whether this is already initialized with the git or we need to do some initialization. Once you do this, if you see something like this on branch master, one side note, you will always and always be on some or the other branch. That branch is called as master, main, checkout, feature, whatever the name, but you'll always be on some of the branch. In this case, we are on the master branch. There is a little bit history involved with that as well. I'll walk you through with that, but we are on this one. Now I've opened this folder in the VS Code. As you can see on the top, this is git 1. So this exact folder is opened up here so that we can work on and see the visualization of this. Now also, I do recommend you to install one plugin which is known as Git Lens. And what this folder is going to do is it will allow you to have this small icon at the top. And once you click on this, this will give you some of the graphs. Right now, we don't have this one. We don't have any commit or anything. That's why it's giving us error. That's okay. That's expected. But it's good. It's good to have this simple plugin. Again, I repeat it, Git Lens, pretty easy. Okay, now let's see what we're going to do here. First and foremost, we're going to create a couple of files and folders here. So let's just go ahead and use touch. And what we're going to do is, let's just call this one as test1. Let's go with the txt, plain and old simple. And we're going to also go ahead and say test2, of course, .txt. We'll go through with the HTML files later on. These are also fun. But we're going to go ahead and have these files. The moment I have these files, now you can see these two files are here. If you want to see the visual aspect, yes, these two files are here as well. So go ahead and click them. I prefer the terminal part. Now let's go ahead and see what does the git status says now. Okay, so the git status is giving us different results now. It is giving us untracked files and nothing to be committed. So what it's saying is basically that, hey, I am initialized in this repository, but there are some of the files which are not in my tracking zone yet. So if you make any changes or anything in these files, I'm not unaware of it and I'm not also keeping track of them. They are out of my tracking zone as of now. So where we are right now. So the whole idea behind this entire thing is that whenever you build any software, you write some code, you add that code into the Git tracking zone, and then you make it a commit. So what we have done so far is we have just a working directory in which we have created some of the files. And that's it. We have done nothing else. Now the next step here, according to our flow, is to use the command git add. Git add command does nothing magical. It just keeps everything under the tracked zone. Let's just say for some reason I want the test1 to be tracked. Test2, I'm still working on it. I'm not yet ready to make it trackable yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to run the command git add, and you will constantly see that a lot of people just add the dot here and that's it. If this is intentional, that's great, but a lot of time this is not intentional. The whole idea behind add is to move into the staging area. And this is where you should only name the file which you are interested in tracking. And by the way, you can add multiple files just by putting up a space. But in this case, I just want to track one file. I'm not interested in tracking all the files. Let's see what happens. When I go ahead and hit an enter, now nothing magic. But again, our magical command, which is git status, just go ahead and run this. And now we see the message to be a little bit different. Let's go ahead and work through with this. It says you are still on branch master. Okay, that's good. Now changes to be committed. That means I'm tracking one file, which is new file, which is test1. And there is also still one untracked file, which I'm not tracking on this. So at this point, just by adding this command, that means you're on the staging area. Staging area is an intermediate zone before you make any commit. So it's almost like a pre-screen before you save your game. Sometimes it happens that, do you really want to save the game? Press yes. Yes, this is exactly that area. You can stage the file, you can unstage the file as well. By the way, you might have seen the commands here that yes, you can do the unstage as well, git rm -- cached and the file name. You can unstage them. We will talk about them later on, but usually nobody untracks them, but it's possible. So right now we are in the position that we are in the staging area. All right, we got it. We are on the screen where we can hit the save button or we can say no button. What's the next hit? The next command is to use is the git commit. Okay, repeating again, working directory, added some file, ask that you track this file. Now we are in the staging area. Now we need to do the commit. Now the commit command in itself is a little bit tricky to understand. In order to do so, I can just go ahead and simply say, hey, I'm ready to commit. So I can just go ahead and hit the commit. Now the problem with the commit command is that I'll walk you through in the next one, that this can be a little bit tricky to work on with. So always it is recommended that you press -M to give a message. Commit needs a message. 100% of the time they need some message that, hey, why are you committing this file? What this zone is or what this file does. And even there's a debate what and how you should write these commit message. We'll definitely go with that. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and say add file 1. That's it. That's my command to the code base that, hey, do this one. Okay. Once I do this, it does some of the stuff and it says master root blah blah stuff. One file changed, 0 insertion, 0 deletion, and all these stuff. So where we are right now in the diagram perspective, we have gone through with this command and we learned that just running alone git commit is not enough. We need to run git commit -M to give a message, and then we have to provide a one-liner message. We'll discuss about them. But definitely we are in this repo stage right now. So if you go ahead and work on with this, so if you go ahead and check out git status again, so if I run the git status again, it says, you know what, there is only one file which I'm worried about, which is test2, because test1, hey, that's already in the repo. That has gone into the repo zone. That means everything is being tracked and everything is updated in that file. Nothing is changed from last I checked onto it. That's nice. Now let's do this exercise one more time, but with little bit error messages so that we can see what happens when things goes wrong. By the way, now if you have installed the git lens, it will give you some of the options that, hey, you have created something here. So this is a single line of, you can say, timeline that has gone, and it gives me all these things, author, messages. It will not give this exact same thing to you as of now, because yes, right now you are not going to be getting all these nice author name, commit you will get, but this author name is definitely going to bother you. I'll show you why you are getting these error messages, why I'm not getting them. So yes, you are in trouble already, but these are the problems we really want to face to understand what goes wrong and what is all the things goes on behind the scene onto that. All right. So first of all, let's go ahead and do the same thing again, but with the test2 file. So the first step is simply go ahead and what we want to do is add. So let's go ahead and add, and this time I want to add a test2 file. All right, that looks good. That has been done in the past as well. And we can use the shortcut dot here as well, because there's just one file to track. I go ahead and hit that. Now the next step is to, obviously now I'm in staging area. You can just verify that by git status. Yes, I'm in the staging area. The next step is to commit it. But this time, instead of running the -M, I'll just go ahead and remove this and see what happens when I don't do anything like this. So if I go ahead and run git commit and I hit enter, oh, it opens up VS Code for me, but it doesn't open VS Code for you. Why this is happening? I can write my message here. I can just go ahead and say my second file or add second file to codebase. I can just go ahead and save this, and I can just simply close this file, and I can go back and you can see it does work for me. But in your case, it might have opened up something in the terminal itself. Why didn't it open it up for me? What did I change in there? That's exactly you want to learn, because by default, whenever you make any commit message, it opens up a Vim, and that's a little bit scary of a code editor. By the way, in case you are stuck with it, press escape once, then the colon, and then the Q. You will be quit with that. In case it doesn't quit it, then simply press Q and then the exclamatory sign. It will forcefully quit that out. But yes, nobody wants to get stuck with the Vim, especially when you are getting started, you are a beginner. So yes, we'll discuss all these things about. Okay, let's move back. So we have done all of this. So we can go ahead and see that, okay, we can just remove this and start it again. We can see that the second file add to the code base. So there are 2 commits now, which I have done. Okay, good start, good start. Let's go ahead and talk about this. Now it's time that we discuss what happened behind the scene, as well as why did it give you an error of username, as well as why it didn't give it to me. Why did it open up the code editor as Vim for you, not for me? So these are the important questions we need to discuss. First of all, a little stage area that we have discussed. So whenever we do a Git initialization, that's the start of our software. That start, keep track of it. Then simply go ahead and create files, whatever the file syntax and everything are there. You can just use files like git add file1 and file2, or optionally you can use git add dot. Dot simply means here that add everything that I have, no matter what sensitive files are, not sensitive files, just add everything. Then when we simply go ahead and check the Git status, it gave me a status report that what files are being under the tracking zone, what files are untracked. Based on that, we learned about the git commit message, and we saw that the git-m is really important to provide a message. Most of the programmers and the coders, you'll find that they give the message directly within the command line. They don't wait for the code editor to open, whether that's Vim or the VS Code. So they simply get the message of -m and provide a good message. There's a big debate about the message as well, which we're going to talk about this. And then the git status. I highly recommend that whoever is learning, repeat this 2-3 times. Create more files and do this flow. It will be super important for you. The next command that we're going to go through is git log, and we are going to go through quite in depth of it. But right now, let's just see what happens when we go ahead. Logs are pretty important for software developers. So we're going to go ahead and say git log. And please ignore the dash online. So no, we are not going to be making this yet. I'll show you the demo of that one as well. So when I do a git log, notice here it gives me so much of the details. It gives me the commit ID. So yes, we can notice that each commit that I made, we saw that programmatically and the visual part that it has a commit ID. So if I go ahead and move this a little bit here, and this one also here, and this one again here, we can see there is a commit ID. But on the GUI, you are going to notice that it gives me a shorter ID, but on the other hand, here is the big ID. But notice here something interesting, that this is 4C8A something, and here also it is 4C8A. So only a few initial letters, usually 6 or 8 letters, are enough to make the Git unique for your repository, but hey, nothing is stopping you from referencing and checking the whole one. It also gives us some details that, hey, this is the user who actually made this commit, and this is the email ID of this user. This is my public email ID. I don't use it for the professional use. And also it gives me the date and all these things and the commit message that I made. So all these details are there. But the bigger question is, how did it came to know about that my name is this and this is my email ID? It's simply because there is a config file, or also known as configuration file, in which all these information needs to be saved first so that we can make all these commits and messages. So we're going to do that in a minute. But there is also one more command that you just saw, that there is also a command --online, and that's why I love this command line editor. It gives me so much of the details that I can just run this. And this times, yes, I get exactly the same, but it's shorter and it's in one line. It just gives me the message, which is the unique SHA, or you can say just unique letters, which makes my commit unique. And it gives me the unique message. And yes, we're going to study about the headmaster a little bit later, but yes, this is all what we got. All right. So let's move up here. And we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about the config files and all these. But first of all, let's talk about the commit message as well. On the internet, there's a big debate about it, and everybody has their own opinion. I'm going to tell you the opinion which the official founders and official website actually mentions, and I also follow that. So here it is. So Git actually follows a principle of atomic commits. That simply means that one commit does the one job. It's not like you do 1,000 different things and then make a commit. You do often commits and you do one task at a time with the commits. That's the whole idea behind atomicity or atomic commits, one thing at a time. So here is this, keep commits centric to one feature, one component, or one fix. If you're fixing bugs, maybe there are 10 bugs you're fixing, so one commit, one bug. That's usually the idea behind all the major MNCs where you'll be working very soon, hopefully. So focus on one thing, that's the whole idea. Now, there's a big debate about when we write the commit message, how do you want to write the commit message? I can write added one file to the code base, or I can simply say add one file to code base. And there's a big debate about this one as well, that whether to use a present or the past commit message. Now, it totally depends on how you want to go with that. The official website or the official recommendation is simply use the present tense but imperative. That means, simple idea is, give order to your code base. Hey code base, do this. Hey code base, add this file. Hey code base, add this changes to my file. Hey code base, add a function to connect to database. So that's the whole idea. Give order to your code base. I'm not super happy with this style. It looks too aggressive, but hey, I'm not making the rule. I simply don't care how much your messages you're giving or all these things details. But the whole idea is that, yes, you are supposed to give command to your code base. Now, one more thing that we're going to do in the next video is understand about this one. So what this whole thing is that how does the git commit and all these things works. In the next video, we're going to work with the git config command, and we're going to see that how it came to know about me and my username, which I've used, as well as how it came to know about my email ID and what is this configuration file. Let's go ahead, move on to the next video and talk about the configuration files. Hey there everyone, Hitesh here, back again with another video, and welcome to the Git series. So we are continuing our Git series. Hope you are enjoying it. In this video, we're going to see a little bit more towards what happens with the Git configuration file. How does the Git comes to know about my name, my email ID, and the default code editor to open up whenever we want to write something. Apart from this, we're going to study about one very important file known as git ignore, so that we can ignore some of the files which are sensitive and we don't want to push them everywhere. Files like which holds API keys which are very sensitive, or maybe some passwords or something similar, we can actually keep them totally separate so that we don't have to mention about, hey, don't track this file again and again, and we can work with that. We'll study a little bit about the git log documentation, and we're going to see a bit about how the hashings are done, what folders are there. It looks like a little bit lot, but it's not there. These are just the concept. You'll breeze through them. No worries at all. So first, let me share the screen with you and let's go with this. The first idea is to figure out that how does Git came to know about my name, my email, and all these details about this. And this will be very helpful for you to know that how this actually goes on. In order to first get about this, first of all, let me go through the notes and work with that. So first, let's understand what is there to study in this one. The first thing that we're going to study about is this command, and this command is not just a lone one. There are a couple of others as well. The command is really simple. It says git config, and then there are two ways of how you can configure the configuration file. One is globally. That means it's system-wide. Anytime you make any Git repository or something, this is going to be interacted with the global file. But there is also a case that you can keep your configuration files local to that particular repository as well. Yes, that's the case as well. But usually what I've seen is anybody who is working with the Git, they like to keep everything as a global, especially the name and email. And we'll see that how we can actually configure the editor, and which is the code, in my case VS Code. That's the command line name for it, the code, and when we're going to see about these changes as well. First, let's go ahead and see that how the documentation looks like for this config, and we'll come back onto this one. So this is the documentation of the config. Not really the best or easiest one, but it's easy to find. You can just click on the reference manual, and this is where it is, the config. So just click on this. And this is how it looks like. Git config, get and set repositories or global options. We'll be focusing majorly on the global option, but as you can see, yep, there is no shortage of these things, and it can go really, really complex. We have so many options, and if you look at the scroll bar, yes, you will be scared a little that, oh my goodness, do I have to learn all of this? Gratefully, no, we won't be needing all of this to work on with this. First of all, let me show you that how you can set up your username and email. We'll refer to this documentation. It's much easier, and this is from the GitHub itself. And the best part is whether you choose Mac, Windows, or Linux, the options are exactly same. The commands are exactly same. So you can open up anytime your GitHub or this documentation and can write down this command. Git config, and then we have to provide -- global. And majorly you'll be setting two things, user.name and then user.email. These are the two options that you have to set so that Git whenever makes any commit or any push knows about your name. Optionally, if you provide the email as well, that is also best option. And my recommendation is to provide everything inside the double quotes, because usually we have first name, last name, maybe a middle name. So Git really doesn't know that when to end these things. If you have just one word, a letter that you want to use, then that's fine. but usually we have spaces, so whenever there's a space in it, it's recommended that you use like this. Let's go ahead and learn about these commands, actually just show you that how you can write this command and where does the Git actually writes this command. That's the most important. So the commands are pretty simple. You can just go ahead and say git config, and the options are pretty simple, global, and then you can just go ahead and say I want to use user. The first option is .name. So you can just go ahead and write your name, whatever your name is. Let's just say your name is Hitesh, so you can just go ahead and use that. I'm not going to run this command because my username is already set. Once you're done with this command, then go ahead and use another command, which is user.email, and in this you obviously have to provide your email. So oops. Let's go here and we can just remove this and user email. So whatever your email is, just go ahead and provide that. For example, let's just say I have this one. Just go ahead and provide your email. Now this actually brings us to the option that yes, we can go ahead and provide exactly same commands as you can see here, user.name, user.email. Now another command that we are going to work through with this is this one. So I want to change my code editor. So this is the command that you should always remember. The problem with the default is, since Git is Linux friendly first, it usually opens up the Vim, which is not so cool editor for the beginners to get started. It has its own learning curve, so I recommend everybody to just go ahead and change it to as a default code editor to the Code or VS Code. Now there is a catch with this one as well, so let me walk you through with that first. If you go ahead and open up your VS Code, sometimes it is possible that while installing the VS Code, your terminal might not be aware of this command. So all you have to do is press Command Shift P, or if you're on Windows, Control Shift P, and it opens up the panel here, and just go ahead and write code here. Just when you write the code, it will show you a command which says install code command in path. What this is going to do is it's going to make sure that your computer is aware about a command which is in the path and installs the code there. Without this, the whole command that we are going to about to give to the Git is not going to work. So make sure you are aware of this one. All right. Once we're done with this, now let's go ahead and see the command in action that is going to help me to set and configure my code editor. So this is the command core.editor. And by the way, there are other ways of setting the code editor. You can just look at the Google on it, and you can set multiple other editors. Maybe you want Sublime Text, maybe you want something else. You can go with that. Make sure you also pass an option of --wait, so that it not only just opens up the code editor, it waits there for a moment so that you can write your things, and as soon as you close the file, then it starts processing the work. So that's the whole idea behind writing the --wait. So once you're done with this, that's it. That's the whole thing. Now moving back onto the notes, now that you are aware that how you can set up all these things, I highly recommend that at this point of time, just pause the video and go back onto your repository, create one more file, add that, commit that, and try to just push that. So that's the whole idea. Not push, but at least commit that. Okay. Now moving on, what we saw in just a moment ago that we do have this git log and online. We discussed about this command just a while ago, in case you remember. We worked on to this one. So let me go ahead and remove this. Git log online, one line, not online, one line. It gives me the logs of the Git in just one line. So obviously you might be wondering that do I have more options onto this one? Absolutely, you do have. Let's go ahead back into this one and just go ahead and look for the log here. It's not easy to find, so I always go for a Control F, find that, and there we go. We can see the log here. And if I just go ahead and click on this, there are so many options that I can work with. Just showing you a few of them. We have options like full diff, log size, start. There's so much of them. Let me zoom out a little bit. And let's just find out the one that we are using, which is one line. There we go. So this is one line option that we have. Let's go. The first one here, the second one. And there we go. So this is the one that we have been using. But as you can see, there are so many more options. So this is the one that we have been using, --one line option. But as you can see, we have options for encoding. We have options for tab expand. I've never used this, notes. There's so many options. And honestly, nobody has ever used them. There are only few which are being used, quite handful in your organization or in your workflow. You always go with that. Right, left, branches, graphs, pretty formats, all medium, short, full, like there's so much of these options. And honestly, nobody's aware of this, but just wanted to show you that how the documentation actually looks like for this. All right, moving on. So let's go ahead and go with the notes. So the next thing that we're going to learn about is the git ignore. So as we can see that the git ignore is one very special kind of a file which is read by the Git itself, and you have to create this file. So let's go ahead and create this file. I'll first go ahead and check where are the things. So I'm into this test1.txt and text2.txt. Now I want to create one more file, and this one is going to be having a very special name, which is .git ignore. And yes, all should be lowercase and it should start with a dot. This is a requirement, no exception at all. Once you go ahead and create a .git ignore file, you'll see that in our code editor, this file actually is available here. And right now this file has nothing at all. So what's the point of having this file? Now, first you need to understand that whenever you have these kinds of files, whenever you're building any big project, there will be a file known as environment variables. And this file holds all the sensitive information like your API keys. And if these API keys gets leaked out, anybody can misuse your system. If these are AWS keys, somebody can spin off machine, bigger machine can lead to the bill. If these keys are OpenAPI keys or OpenAI keys, somebody can make a lot of requests and generate a good bill for the OpenAI. So you get the point. There are some sensitive information which we want to keep separate and safe. For example, let's just say I have one .env file, very common file to have in this. And let's just say this is my MongoDB URI. And I'm going to go ahead and say this is my test URL path, whatever that is. I don't want this file to keep on going. But right now the problem is that if I go ahead and check the git status, notice here, if I go ahead and work with the git status, it says that, hey, there are a couple of files which are untracked. This VS Code, don't worry, don't bother about it. This is the VS Code configuration file, don't worry at all. But I don't want this file to be keep tracked of it, or it should go about it. Also, this .env file, since it contains the sensitive information, all the time when I go ahead and work with my directory, then I have to say git add and very carefully that, hey, I want to worry about this git ignore and VS Code, and maybe I've created 5 different files more. Let's just go ahead and do that. That would be super cool. Let's go ahead and say touch, and we're going to go ahead. How many files do we have? 1 and 2. Let's go ahead and say that I want to create one more test3.txt, and maybe there is one more, and this is going to be test4.txt. Okay, now let's check the git status again. If I go ahead and run the git status, I have so many files that I have to monitor. And at this exact point, I would love to use something known as git add dot so that it adds all the file that I'm creating. And when we're working with something like JavaScript frameworks, there are thousands of node files. Sometimes this option is better choice, but I cannot do this because, hey, there's some stuff going on. So the point is that you can just go ahead and come into this git ignore file and mention all the files which you say that, hey, I don't want you to keep a track of them. Completely ignore them out of the Git ecosystem. So we can just go ahead and write .env, just like that, exactly the file name. If you have more folders name, you can go ahead and write folder name. For example, there is a folder / just go ahead and write it like that. Most commonly, you'll see something like node_modules, like this. Ignore all the files and this entire folder. So it's a common thing. Now, the moment I enter all these things into this, let's check what happens when I run the git status command again. Now notice here in the git status, and if I compare it with the above one, previously it was keeping a track of env, and now it's not keeping a track of .env. I also don't want that this .vs code, since this is just my personal folder, nobody should be keeping a track of this one. So I'm going to go ahead and say, I'll say VS Code and this entire folder. I don't want this folder to be tracked up. Let's see what happens when I go ahead and run the git status again. Now it's keeping a track of git ignore, which obviously we want to push. And it's also keeping a track of all these new files that we have. So pretty good. Let's go ahead and try to run this thing again. And you can do this again with me because you have already set your username and your email. Now you'll be able to follow me along. So let's go ahead and say git add, and I want to add all these files. So let's go ahead and use a shortcut git add. There we go. Let's check the git status, what happens now. So now it's keeping a track of all these files. They are in the staging phase. That's our intermediary phase. We can unstage, we don't want to. Let's go ahead and commit this. Now let's go ahead and run the git commit. And once I do the git commit, no -m option, if I just hit enter now, Now it is going to open up this VS Code editor and the commit file. Notice here the file is commit_edit msg. Keep this note here. I'm going to show you where this file actually exists. This is exactly where I want to be. And this is exactly the file which you might have opened up if you accidentally have run the command without configuring your code editor. So that's a mistake. Be aware of this. Now I can write this message here. And again, don't worry about these hash. These are all comments. They never go inside the commit message, so you can ignore them safely. If you wish, you can delete them, but let's just keep that. That was unintentional, but happens when you do record videos. Anyways, let's go ahead and work with this. Now let's go ahead and write a message for this. And this is my third commit if I'm not wrong. And I'm going to say add third and fourth file. And again, we are following the same convention that we do give command to the code base. Hey code base, do this stuff. Once I save this and close this, you will notice in this, we can simply, no, don't show any notification. But here we can see the commit is performed nicely. And let's go ahead and do the git log. And we can see add third and fourth, whatever that is, third and fourth file or whatever that is. But we can see we are able to successfully do all of this. But there is one more thing that we need to worry about. And not just one, actually, couple of things which probably might be bothering you, probably not be bothering you, but I'll give you these bothering questions. First and foremost, the question is, I know that there is a git ignore file, but how will I know in thousands and thousands of files in my project that what should I write in this git ignore? And thankfully, you can just do a Google for this keyword, which says git ignore generator. And yes, folks of the internet are always great. And they have given us so many of these generators. All of them does exactly the same. Let's choose the second one, first one, whichever you like, feel free to choose them. Let's just say you are working on node project. Just go ahead and click on the node and just simply say create, and it will give you a pre-generated template which simply gives you that commonly ignored files. And you're going to see that, yes, there is a .env here, which are being ignored. So most of them are pretty good. And it's just not about Node. It's just I work mostly on that. You can just go ahead and look for the Django files if you're working in that ecosystem. So yes, these generators are available. Even there are VS Code plugins for these generators. So anytime you're working with this, it's a good idea that you come up here and just look for whatever you are working, whatever you're coding. And again, by the way, I can show you more as well. There's the first one by Toptil. And you can see that, hey, if I go ahead, they all give the same file. They're all being same. So you can see, this is how you can just copy and paste this one. So yes, don't worry about having the git ignore file. It's totally fine and totally okay to copy paste the things here. All right. Another thing which might not be bothering you is we studied about this one thing, which is this one, git config. And if we are providing the things like user.name, user.email, there is 100% case that this is getting stored in some or the other file. Where is that file? I want to see that file. Maybe you don't want to, but I want to see that file so that I can know where the things are actually going. And of course, we're going to do that. For this, first of all, we need to hit the root of the Mac, or if you're in Linux, again, the same command. All you have to do is hit the CD. This is the home directory. By the way, you can check this out. This is my home directory of the entire computer. In the Windows, it's usually the C drive or the user's drive. Wherever you are, you can figure that out. And in here, what we can do is we can just run the cat command onto a very special file known as dot, and it's known as git config. This is the global configuration file. If I go ahead and hit enter onto this one, now you can see that it gives me name and it gives me email. It gives me the sign-in key, which obviously I'm going to blur out. This is my sign-in key, which I use to sign in into the GitHub account. But yeah, this is how it looks like. And also you might have noticed that it says editor is code -- wait. So by the way, it has a lot of blocks like the user block, the commit block, the GPG block, and there can be other blocks as well, which can work through with that. I'm going to go ahead and hide this because I don't want you to show my GPG keys and all these things. But yes, the whole idea is that everything is stored in some file. And if any time you think that I don't remember the command or something, you can literally go into this file and change it. There is nothing wrong with that. It's totally a configuration file. That's it. All right. So moving on, a couple of things behind the scene theory that I want to share with you. These are really interesting ones as well. So how does the commit work? Now that we have seen that couple of commits actually work. So if I go ahead and check out my Git section here and the Git, we can see we have 2-3 commits which are going on, and we can work through with that by simply running the command git log online. First of all, we need to go back onto this folder. Let me just go into this folder. And for this, let's go ahead and drag and drop this. I'll just go ahead and say, yep, that's the one I want. And let's go ahead and do a quick ls git 1. Let's go into the cd git 1. I love these suggestions. Let's try the command again, which is, yeah, this one. And we can see that these are the commits, and we have no idea, but somebody's saying head is pointing towards master. I have no idea what that is. I really want to explore this. Let's go up here and try to see what happens with these commit messages. So in the world and the ecosystem of the Git, every commit is dependent on the previous commit, except the first commit. And that's exactly is mentioned in these notes. As you can see, whenever you make a commit, and how does a commit is comprised of? If you look at here, there is a really long unique ID up here. This long unique ID is known as the hash, and hash is generated. It's nothing, just a long combination of letters and numbers. So it is generated uniquely by some algorithms known as SHA-1 and a couple of other algorithms as well. So it is comprised of this, a commit message and some information about it. But what's not being shown here, that the commit is always dependent on the previous commit as well, because it's a tracking mechanism which helps us to track what happened between the previous commit, the previous checkpoint, and the next checkpoint. And this is exactly I've tried to present here in the demonstration. So this is our first commit. Every commit will definitely get a hash, but there is also an information about the parent, like what is your previous commit, who is your previous. In the very first commit, the parent pointer, yes, this is exactly a pointer, points towards the null that, hey, I'm the very first commit. I'm not dependent on anyone. And apart from this, couple of other information is also stored, like what was the system, what was the time, what was the user, what was the email, and all these things. So this is all is being captured inside the info itself. Whenever the second commit is made, you obviously generate a hash, but this hash is generated based on the previous hash, the previous parent information, and some of the chunks of the info. Not majorly, but it's heavily dependent on the hash and the previous commit. And this parent is going to be pointed towards automatically towards the previous one. And this is exactly the mechanism which helps you to go back in time or in the previous checkpoint so that you can just restore the file information into the previous saved information. And the third one goes exactly like this. We have a hash, we have a parent which will point towards the previous one, and we have the information. So pretty simple stuff. But what's fun is actually to found this ability to check all these hashes. Let me show you how we can do that. Now, if I go into this folder, what you're going to notice is I can do a ls. All right, that's good. But what you'll notice is I can also do an ls-la, which is a command to give me a long listing and show me all the hidden files as well. And what we can see now is there is a folder known as Git. And yep, this is a directory. Yeah, that's nice. Can I go into this directory? Of course, there is nobody stopping you to go into this one. It's your system. Let's go ahead and say that I want to go inside this Git. And if I go into this Git and do an ls, I can see so many of these things. One file which I've just seen is commit_edit msg, the message file. Remember the file which we opened up while working with the commit when we didn't pass the message -m? Exactly that file. But not only that, we have some of the folders known as hooks, objects, refs, index, head, and some of these files as well. The better structure that we can understand here is doing in long listing so that we can see some of them are files and some of them are folder. So as we can see, these all things are file. This whole thing and including the index one, these are all the files. But here the hooks and the info, logs, object, these are directories. And what's the fun if we cannot go inside these folder? So what I've done is inside the code editor, I have actually opened up so that I can see all the dot files. By the way, you can do that pretty easily by opening up Command-Shift-P. And if I, or not just Command-Shift-P, if I just go ahead and press Command and comma, or on the Windows Control and comma, you can see that this option is there, which says files, exclude file. And here you can see the dot git is there. Just go ahead and mark an X on that. Just remove it. And that's it. You'll be able to see all of your hidden folders. Anyways, the whole idea now is that can I go into this Git folder and explore these things? So if I go ahead and zoom this a tiny bit more, we can see that all these are folders and some of them are commit edit messages. This is exactly the file that we opens up when we write these messages. We do have some of the things config, the core configuration, which is repository level, not the global level. We have the file which are descriptions. We don't want to worry about that as of now. It's an unnamed repository. We also have this interesting thing, which is head, which is, notice here, is pointing towards the master. As I mentioned, in the Git, you are always on some branch. We are right now by default the branch master. And that's what this head is pointing. We'll study about the head in the upcoming videos, but right now, this is enough. Index, we don't want to go into that because that's a file we don't want to open right now. It keeps everything in check. But not only that, you can also see that there are some other things as well. Most importantly, the hooks. This is one of the most advanced folder in the Git. And this is exactly, if you have studied hooks in JavaScript or React or anywhere else, this is exactly the same. So if you want to execute some of the scripts or some of the commands or some of the code which needs to execute just before the commit or just after the commit message, or you want to control that how the commit message actually goes, or maybe you want to add the ticket IDs and you want to validate that whether whoever is committing the message is providing the ticket ID for solving this bug, you can actually do all of this through here. And a lot of companies does that. And it's nothing, these are just the samples here. You can go ahead and change these samples like pre-push. So this is all the code that how you can write these code. Let me just zoom out a little. So these are all the codes that how you can actually have an example hook script to verify before the push, just the pre-hook. There is pre-rebase. A lot of companies use rebase. We'll talk about them later on. It's a pretty nasty and scary command. But we have commit message. If you want to control that how the commit message should look like, you can write a hook for that. And this is a little bit out of the scope of this entire course or even any course at all. But yes, and this is totally possible. We do have info as well. Not going to be touching it much. It's not useful for us as of now. This is where we keep all the logs that what all happened in our repository. If you just remove this, everything is gone. And again, this head is not readable much as of now, but some of the points we can read about like add third and fourth, all the commit history actually goes into the head. We do have some of the references as well, like where the head is pointing towards master as of now. Later on, I'll show you how to change the branch and we'll come back here and we'll see that how this heads actually get changed. So the software, how it works internally is totally open to us. And this is what I love absolutely about it. So coming back onto the notes part. So this is what we have studied into this particular video, that how the commit message are being made and are being stored in our application. That's a really fun part. And I hope this actually gives you a more clarity of how the software works internally. And once you know this, you get much more confidence of using the software in itself. It's not really that hard. In the next video, we're going to be talking about the branches and what I've been yelling around for some time about the master. What is this master and what are these branches? This is all what we're going to study in the next video. Hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have enjoyed this, do let me know in the comment section. It really, really motivates me to make more such videos. That's it for this one. Let's catch up in the next one. Hey there everyone, Hitesh here, back again with another video, and welcome to the Git series. So we'll continue, and in this video we're going to be focusing more on the Git branches. Now this is really a fun topic and pretty awesome as well. Some of the portion of this video are considered as a little bit advanced, but not for us. We're going to be just breeze through it, we're going to flow through it, and you'll be having so much fun. So we'll learn about the branches, we'll understand the concept behind it, how it works behind the scene, and you will get to know that how the collaborative environment works in the Git. It's pretty fun. Let's go ahead and get started, and we'll do everything from scratch again. We'll be initializing a repository, we'll put some files and folders onto it, and we'll start from there. So what we're going to do is, let me first share the screen because that's the most important part. And let's go ahead and move into a new folder so that we can work on with this one. So what I'll do is I'll open up my folder and I'll just move in here. So this is where we have been working with the Git 1. So far we have been working with this. But now let me just go ahead and drag and drop the Git 2, which was another folder just sitting idle for us. So I'll just drag and drop this one. All right, so this folder is open with us, and let's start working with this first, that how usually an application is designed. So I'm going to go ahead and move into this folder here. So just adjusting some stuff. So let's go ahead and move on to one directory back. And if I do a quick ls, I can see I'm still here. I'm going to go one folder back and I'm going to see that we have Git 2. This is the intentional folder where we want to go further. Let's go into Git 2. Oops. And we'll go into Git 2. There we go. And if I do a quick ls, nothing inside it. So obviously the first step always is to initialize the Git. So this time we can see the entire workflow happening around. Let's go ahead and work on with. So we're going to go ahead and first check the status. This is always a good idea. Make this a habit that always check the Git status. Although we understand that it's not a Git repository, but it's a good idea to have it in your flow. After that, we know that we always run the command git init to initialize the repository. So there we go. Once we initialize this and check the Git status again, we see that now we actually can understand some of the more status. Like it says Git status is on branch master. All right, what is this master? And what is this branch concept? And no commits yet. Okay, we understand this part. But what is this branch here and what is this master? Even if I go up here and if you just shrink this a little bit here, just like that, you can see on the bottom part of it, it says master here. So this is pretty nice and interesting. We would love to get to know more about it, that how this actually works. So right now we can see we have nothing inside it. Let's go ahead and create a couple of files and folders. So let's go ahead and say, hey, I want to create one file. And let's just go ahead and call this one as index.html. I'm pretty sure you are aware of what HTML is, and even if not, it's just a basic text file. You can create that as well, but I think you are quite familiar with the HTML workflow. It's a pretty basic one. So we're going to just go ahead and create this one, and let's see what happens. If I go ahead and check the status, git status, and it says, hey, there's one file which I'm not tracking. Cool. Let's go ahead and add this file. We know how to do this. We can just go ahead and use a dot, or we can just go ahead and use index.html. Let's add this. Now we obviously know this is in the staging area. We have already studied and discussed this. If I go ahead and check the git status with this one, we know that this is in the staging area. What do we do after the staging area? We just commit this one. We're going to go ahead and use the commit. We obviously don't want to open up the VS Code, so directly we'll be giving up -m as an option to provide a message. And I'll just say add index file. That's it, my command. I go ahead and enter this. Now my file is there. If I go back up here, I can see the index file is there. I'm on the master one. That's good. But I'm not able to see the Git folder and all the things that are happening. So let's go ahead and use a command comma and just scroll a little bit where we see all of this so that you can see freshly how this actually works. And now you can see there is a .git folder which is mazed as, hey, you can just go ahead and hide it completely. I'll just go ahead and cross it off. And that's it. Once I cross it off, I can see my Git folder, which I'm pretty interested in. And I can just open this up and have a discussion on this. So now that you saw that firsthand. All right. So far we have seen all this thing, but now here is the new command. I can just go ahead and run a command, and that is git branch. I'm not going to do anything outside of it. No -m, nothing like that. We'll just go ahead and learn about the git branch. What happens with this? If I go ahead and hit enter, it says an asterisk, a pointer, which is pointing towards the master. All right, pretty interesting. How do we do with that? What's this branch? And let's go ahead and study with that about all of this through the notes. These are the best way to understand this. So branches, what are these branches in the Git folder? Branches you can just simply understand like an alternative timeline. Now, I don't know if you have watched the Doctor Strange recently or not, pretty good movie, but it's like a timeline. And every single coder who is contributing to the same code base can be on its own timeline without affecting each other's timeline. So for example, there is always and always one branch on which you will be. Now by default, Git is a pretty old software. That's why it always by default creates a master as a branch. So this green one, you can consider this as a master branch. And all these nodes are the checkpoints or the commits that you have made. Now, fun thing about this master branch is these days nobody likes to call it as master. There's some controversy around it. We don't want to go into that. So it's pretty obvious that you will be asked to rename your branch as main. Again, call it main, master, Superman, doesn't really matter. It's just a branch name. So this is our straightforward timeline, and this is where we are sitting right now. And that's why our pointer said that you are on the master branch. Pretty accurate. Now, how do we create the alternative timeline and how can we work with that? That's an interesting question. So that's exactly what we'll be going, and then we'll come back and talk about the head. We will definitely keep an eye on where the head is pointing right now, and then we'll come back. First, let's create a couple of branches, walk through with them, do some commits, do some exercise with that. That would be pretty fun. Let's go back. Right now, it just says that you are on the master branch. Okay. And if I check the git status, obviously there is nothing much. It's just nothing. So in the index file, I'm going to go ahead and use an exclamatory sign and hit the tab. It gives me a default. So I'll just go ahead and say git learning. I'm just designing a web page. Not designing basically. I'm just writing some text into this one. So looks good as a project. All right, looks good. Now this is usually how I write the code. Now if I go ahead and check the git status and it says there's one file which is modified. I'm not having a history of it, or I haven't made a checkpoint of this. So would you like to make a checkpoint? Of course I would like to make a checkpoint. So I'll just go ahead and say, hey, I would love to add the index.html. Okay. And then I would like to add a commit on them. By the way, you can just work with the commit directly as well. Commit and add can be done in one command as well. I'll walk you through with that one as well. Nothing of a big deal, but I usually prefer two-step commit. So there we go. We have -m as an option and add index file. And I'll just say update code for index file. Looks pretty good. And I'm going to just go ahead and make a commit. There we go. Now we are done. Pretty good exercise, and we can see all the things are going. But what's interesting is, even if still I check what is git branch, and there we go, it still says pointing towards master. And if I go ahead, open up this git folder, first of all, notice this head. I hope you can see that. That's visible nicely. Notice here there is a head here, and if I just click on this head, it says ref head master. Time to zoom out a little. There we go. You can see that it says head ref head master. We'll see that. We'll check this file again one more time once we create more branches. And also inside the ref, you'll see the heads. And if I open this up, there is something known as master. What's inside that doesn't really matter. It's just a unique code. The SHA value doesn't really matter, but it says master. Now, step one. How do we create more branches? That's the most important thing. There are a couple of ways actually how you create multiple branches, and all of them are correct. There is nothing absolutely wrong with that. Let's go ahead and start with the basic one. So I'm going to go ahead and say git branch, and let's just say there is another coder in my team who is working on the navigation bar and will be working on navigation bar. So I'm going to go ahead and say nav bar is the name of the branch. Now, how do you pick up the branch name? Now, that's totally internal, up to the company. You can call this as navbar. You can call this as bug fix. You can call this as a feature. Whatever you like, you can name it whatever you like. I'm going to go ahead and say git branch navbar. I hit enter. And now let's check when I run the git branch command. It says, okay, my pointer is pointing towards the master, but there is another branch that I can move on to, and it's known as nav-bar. If I go up here, notice here the ref still head says master, but now we have another folder into it which says navbar. So yes, head can be on the master or it can be on the navbar. But here the head is still pointing towards the master. That is still not being changed because our pointer is pointing towards the master. Okay, how do I move on to a different branch? Again, there are multiple ways of doing so. We'll be using the most easiest one, which is the git checkout, and we'll be calling that I want to go to navbar. The moment I say git checkout navbar, I go ahead and hit enter. Now it's switched to navbar. Now what changes does it actually make? First of all, I would love to see the branch. Okay. The pointer, of course, color is not a good idea in the terminal to check out that, hey, it's green now. The most important thing is this pointer. This pointer is now pointing, the pointer is now pointing towards the navbar. That's good. Let's see what happens here. In the head, the navbar is here, the master is here, both of them are here. Both of them actually are pointing towards the same thing because we haven't done anything in that other branch. But if I go ahead and check the head, now the head is actually pointing towards the navbar. So here I'm showing you the behind the scene details of how the Git actually works internally on the command line and how these outputs actually comes in. Okay, this looks good, but technically I hope you can see that what is happening, and I think our Git, this one is going to help us to understand the things. Now we can see, although we have created the branch, but you can see the navbar is here, the master is here. They both are pointing to the same location. So let me tell you what is happening right now through the notes. I think that would be much more easier to understand. So this right now is our commit. Then we made one more commit, and then we created one more branch. Although we have created a branch, but the code has never changed. There is nothing which we have done here. So even though there is an alternative timeline that is going on, but that is also pointing actually to the same code itself. So we haven't done nothing. Whether you call this branch as navbar or master, they basically are doing exactly the same thing. The code is exactly same. So right now, all of us are sitting at this position. So we need to move forward in the time. So we need to do some work inside this branch, which is master. We need to also work a little bit on the navbar so that we can see what differences they do make and does they affect each other's code, something like that. All right, so currently we are on the navbar. So what we're going to do is, now we are in the navbar, so we're going to go ahead and create a new file. And since this guy is working on the navbar, let's go ahead and say that, hey, you create a navbar.html, and we're going to go with that. Now we have a navbar.html, so I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, navbar. This navbar requires its own code, so I'm going to go ahead and simply have a nav. And I'm going to add some bullet points into this. So unordered list, inside that, let's have some of the list items, and we'll just have 3 of them. Basically, I'm just writing navbar here. So what do we have? Home, we will have about us, and we'll have contact us. Pretty classic. Feel free to write any text inside it. That's also exactly the same. Now that we have some of the text, we have worked on our navigation bar. Maybe that's all is required. It could be as complex as code as you can imagine, but this is what I am having. And currently where I'm on the nav bar. Let's go ahead and check out the Git status. If I go ahead and check this, there is one nav bar which is untracked. Remember, reminding it again, I'm on the nav bar branch. I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, let's just go ahead and add this. This time this file name is navbar.html. Added this. And let's go ahead and commit this. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's go ahead and add this commit message, add navbar to codebase. Pretty good. Okay, this is what we have done so far, that we have added a navbar. All right. Now let's see what happens, and let's see what the branch situation is. In this case, it will be much helpful to check out the Git Lens, the plugin that I mentioned earlier in the class. Now notice here, the navbar is here, the master is here. So navbar has moved a little bit ahead and master is still at the same position. All right, let's go ahead and switch the branch and see what happens. So how do I switch the branch? Again, pretty easy. You can just go ahead and do a git checkout. And instead of the navbar, we're going to go ahead and say, hey, let's go on to the master branch. The moment I switch to the master branch, look what happens to my code base. The file which I made, navbar, is completely gone. Yep, it's completely gone. Why is it gone? Simple reason, because it was added by some another coded. We haven't merged those branches. He's working on his own timeline. I am completely unaware of what he's doing. Let's just say I'm also here and I want to work on something. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm working on the heroes section of the website. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's just go ahead and add a heroes section. Let's add this. And once I have this hero section, and I should actually rename this. It should be moreover rather hero section.html, my bad. And let's just go ahead and add this. Let's just open this file. Remove this, remove this. So how does a hero section look like? We'll just go ahead and add a section. We'll add an h1 onto this one. And let's just add lorem 10 words there. Seems good, like a hero section. And what else? Maybe a paragraph with some lorem words of 20. Yeah, there we go. So we have some lorem ipsum, but this is our hero section. Obviously, what do you want to do now? You want to commit this code. Let's just go ahead and say git add, and we have this hero section.html. Added this. Let's just go ahead and do a commit. And this time we're going to say add hero section. Come on. hero section to the code base. All right, pretty good. Now what happens to the code base? All right, the hero section is here, but the most interesting part is how does everything looks like when we change this? Let's do a checkout. I want to do a checkout onto the nav bar. The moment I do a checkout on the nav bar, and I can see the nav bar is here, but hero section is gone. And if I do a checkout onto the master, if I go ahead and check out the master, and my bad, it's supposed to be master. Although AI can actually suggest me the commands, that's really nice. But if I go ahead and do this, now my, okay, where am I? I am switched to master, so obviously hero section is here, but so you get the idea. You get the idea that we are having a completely different timeline. So right now, this main branch has moved into the time and have added some of the code to the code base. On the other hand, this branch who is representing the nav bar has done working with the nav bar. So they are completely on different timeline, completely different code bases, completely different file. And that's why I say it is so magical to work on with this. The most important thing here to actually understand one thing, which is about the head. Now head always points to where the branch is currently at. Now it is not always necessary that your head is pointing towards the end of the branch. Usually it does, but you can actually allow your head to point one back as well because it's a checkpoint. Just like you can restore your game into the previous checkpoint, yes, exactly we can do with the code bases as well. But one thing you need to understand that the head, the whole idea, the concept of the head came from these cassettes where you have a head which plays onto that. If you flip the cassettes, these head is still pointing towards wherever you left it last time. So this is a head. If you switch to the master branch, this is obviously going to point towards here. But if you switch on to another some branch, your head is obviously going to point towards that branch. It's not a pretty difficult concept to understand. It's just that wherever your branch is latest, that's where it's going to be pointing. So let's just go ahead and try out that where our branch is. So let's go ahead and learn about it. Git branch. Currently I'm on master. So where my branch is pointing towards, where the head is pointing. The head is obviously towards the master, and not just, there are multiple commits into the master branch as well. So it's pointing towards the latest ref that's there is. So we can see that we have nothing inside the tags as of now, but heads can be on the master or can on the nav bar. Now this master, as you can see, let me just walk you through with the git log. This is where the git logs are pretty important, and we're going to go with the one line. Notice here the head is pointing towards this branch 31AE, and that's exactly the file that we can see here. So it could have pointed, we can forcefully ask it that, hey, point onto this one. I don't want to see the latest comment. I want to point towards the one back comment. I'll show you the commands for that, but it's completely doable. So you get the idea where the head is. It just points towards where the updated code base is or where the intentional code base is. All right, that's nice. Now let's go ahead and switch this one. So I'll just close this so that it doesn't mess up the things. Let's go ahead and check out another branch. So we're going to go ahead and say git checkout, and instead of the master, we're going to go into the nav bar. There we go. Now, if I go ahead and do the git one line again, notice here, it's pointing towards the nav bar, and this one obviously is gone. So now if I open this up again and I check out where the head is pointing towards this one. You can just go ahead and check this one. It's pointing towards the nav bar, and this is where right now the head is. All right, quite a lot of in-depth detail. Now, coming back onto the part that both of them are completely unaware of this, and we have learned about this. So this is the flow that we have worked on with so far. So we learned about the git branch command. It shows me all the possible branches are available. And we can just create a new branch by simply saying git branch and bug fix. Usually this is the common syntax, but call it navbar, footer, bug fix, whatever you like. You can just go with that. And you can also use the command git switch, or you can use the command git checkout. Both of them almost does exactly the same. It just moves you to another branch. So feel free to use git switch, or you can use git checkout. And git log we have already seen, and we have done multiple times of the switching and all these commands. Now there are a couple of shortcuts that you'll see quite a lot around thrown in the entire Git ecosystem. What you can do is you can run the command of git switch -c and then the name of the branch. It will do the two things at the same time. It will create a branch and move you there. So yeah, that's nice. You can also do exactly same with the git checkout as well. Git checkout, when used with the option of -b, B for boy, yes, -b, And you can go for dark mode, pink mode, whatever you like, and it will just create a new branch and will move you there as well. So again, shortcuts, you can use branch and then checkout, or you can use the checkout -B to create a new branch as well as move it to this one. And always commit before switching to another branch is usually a good advice. You can just go ahead and give it to yourself. And always go to the Git folder and check out if you're in initial phase to understand the concept of the head, that where the head is pointing towards. Now comes up the interesting part, is obviously we don't want to hang around with the different branches. If I have to check out the navigation bar, I have to move to entirely different branch. And if I want to check out the hero section, I have to move into the main branch or the master branch. So it's not a good thing. It's not a good feasible workflow. So we need to learn something about merging of the branches. Now, merging of the branches, a lot of beginners are afraid of it. You don't need to be. I'll walk you through with that. So there are two types of merging. One is the fast forward merging, in which the main branch doesn't do much. You just work entirely onto a separate branch and then you merge that branch into the main. Pretty easy workflow with that. This is the one where the master branch remains as it is. We don't change anything. I'll show you that workflow as well. But it's much more easier to actually merge this one. But what's critical to understand is not fast forward merge. In this case, your alternative branch is also working, your main branch is also working, and eventually at some point of time, you want to pack into this one. So I want to just go ahead and merge these things. So in order to merge, first and foremost, make sure you are on the branch which you don't want to merge. Like whole idea is I'm bringing something into me, so I should be on that platform. It's not like you are on different platform and you are moving that same platform here. The ideal situation is let's just go ahead and merge this. All right, so this is pretty easy to work on with this. Let's go ahead and have a practical of this one. First of all, where you are. So if I go ahead and check out Git branch, I'm on navbar, not a good idea. I want to be on master so that I can bring navbar into me. So I'll just go ahead and say git checkout and I'll move into master. All right, let's check it one more time. Now I'm in the master branch. But the problem is that how do I merge the navbar in the master so that I can see the navbar onto this file? Now we have a special situation right now that nothing is conflicting each other. Whatever the branch I have created, that branch guy didn't work on the same file that I have worked on. He worked on completely different files. So that is okay. That is a good situation right now. In order to merge this, all I have to do is just run the command git merge and the name of the branch that you want to merge. In this case, I have a branch that is navbar. Once I go ahead and hit enter, it's saying waiting for your editor. Now this is waiting because I haven't passed any message for this one. The default message that it gives me is merge branch navbar. So obviously what we are doing right now is we all are moving into the new zone. That means this branch was trending here, this branch was standing here. So obviously we have to move forward in the time. We cannot go back in the time. So we are moving forward. And in this particular commit, we are taking this whole code in here. But this particular commit also needs a message, a commit message to work on with. And that's exactly what is happening. It is giving me that, hey, choose a message. And usually the message looks like this, merge branch navbar. So we are pulling all the code of merge branch in here. Pretty nice. I'll go ahead and I'm happy with this message. So I'll just save this and close this. I'll go back and no, I don't need any notification. And notice what happened here. It says navbar.html. There is 7 something here. There's a plus here. That means all the code that was there was the insertion code. No deletion code was there. One file was made, changed, and create mode and whatnot. Now, I would love to check out the Git logs. That would be very, very interesting. Okay. So at this point, everything was okay. Then there was this navbar, add navbar to the code base. So what happened here is all the commits that were made in this green zone, so this is our navbar, are also a part of now this main branch. So anything that happened here is also coming in here. Okay, so this navbar here. Then we worked and added the hero section to the code base that was in the main branch. But now we have merged into this, all of this. Now, how does it look like? Does it really look like these branches and all of that? Yes, it looks exactly like that. Let me show you that. Even there are tools like Git lens are going to show you this. So notice here. Now this is exactly much nicer to see and understand. Can I zoom this a little? Yep. So notice here, we were working here. The commit was included. The head was here. Then we merged out. We went and we started to create a new branch, which was navbar for bringing in the navigation bar. In the meantime, we worked on this one, and there was one commit made that we wanted to work with the hero section. And now we both are going in the future and are merging everything. How nicely and how easily it was all done. Pretty nice, pretty okay. Let's see the code base as well, because that's where the interesting part is, apart from the Git. Now we have index, which was already there. We have the hero section, which was already there. And we have the nav bar as well. So all the code that my friend has written, or my colleague has written, is now in here. That is super, super nice. Now, although it's not really kind of a fun thing to do, but a lot of companies does this thing, is writing one more additional command. And I'm going to just show you here. It's not really fun, not my favorite one, but still a lot of companies has asked me to do so. So I can just run a command git branch and the -d. It's a pretty dangerous option. That's why they call it as -d. Fun stuff. It is actually for deleting the branch. And I want to delete the branch navbar. What happens when I do this? Oh, it deletes the navbar branch. What happens when I just go ahead and run the command git branch? Now we have just one branch, which is master. Interesting. Let's go ahead and check out this and git length. All right, so git length, let me just go ahead and start this again. So although in the git length history, we still have this, oops, my bad. We all have this once because it was previously made, so we are not deleting the history of itself. But now we are deleting this branch because the branch has served its purpose. It's no longer useful for us. If we need, we can create more branches, and it works pretty fine. So this is the entire part of how things are done. Can we do something more? Exactly same. This time a little bit fast forward so that you can see things happening a little bit fast pace. Yeah, of course, why not? We know that we have just this branch. So how do we go ahead and create a new branch? We can do this time using the git checkout -b option, and we want to create footer. So let's go ahead and create a footer for this one. And we switched into the new branch, and we can just go ahead and see git branch. And there we go. Now we are on the footer. If we go back onto the code file, it's exactly same thing which are pointing. Let's go ahead and create a new file. Let's go ahead and say this is footer.html. Go ahead and say, hey, this one is going to be footer. There we go. And nice footer. I'm running out of the words. Nice footer. And what do usually people put? 2024 copyright, something like that. We have done this. Now we want to obviously check out this one. Not check out yet, add this one. By the way, we can do add and commit at the same time as well. I'm not interested in that. I'll just do one by one. So I'll just add this one, and I'll go ahead, oops, git commit, and we'll just go ahead and use add footer section would be nice. Add footer section to the code base. There we go. We have done this. So there is a commit now, and obviously our main branch is not aware of it. Let's go ahead and git checkout. We don't want to use -b now. I'll go move on to the master, and hopefully master is not aware of the footer. Whatever the work we have done, master is not aware of it. But if I go ahead and check out this one, git length, now we have another footer branch, and we want to merge all the things that we have done, the footer branch has done, into this one. So pretty simple. In order to merge any branch, what we can do is first see where we are. So git branch is a nice option to run again. I'm on the master. I want to bring all the code from the footer. Let's go ahead and do that. Git merge, and we're going to go ahead and bring in footer. There we go. Since there are no conflicts, it just merged it. And there we go. Pretty nice and easy. And we can see the footer is here. That's it. Now, coming up on to the more complex stuff than this, because this was all easy. And people are not afraid of the easy part. And merging the branches is a tricky task. Let me show you why it does. So there are possible chances where things are not that much great. Things can go a little bit messy. Let me show you what happens when Git tries to get into the conflict zone. And let me show you first what are these conflict zones so that you can understand exactly. So where we are right now, we are on to the master branch. So let's just say we are working on the master branch, and we go ahead and check out the index, and we go here and say footer added. Okay. And what happens if somebody go ahead and push this commit? Nothing bad. We can just go ahead and say we have to check the status first, good practices. We know that this is here, so we can just go ahead and say git add index. So assume this is a really complex code. We have added this. We want to have a git commit, and we'll just go here, add footer in index file, commit that. Pretty nice and easy. Now comes the conflict part. Somebody did checked out the branches, and somebody checked out onto the footer branch. Git checkout, if I can write that, and I'll go into the footer branch. Okay, now I'm in the footer branch, and what I did here is, once I checked into the footer branch, I actually went into the index file again, and I see there's nothing. There's nothing inside this branch. I went up here and I just simply said footer was added successfully. All right. So I hope you can see this is a point of conflict. Now we're also going to go ahead and add a commit. Let's go ahead and say git add index file. This is the file that we want to add. Git add, no, this time we need to commit, and we are going to go ahead and say something different as a commit. Update index file would be a good message. Update index file with footer code. All right. So we have done this. Now here's the interesting part. We can go ahead and check out, we are on the footer branch. So we can just go ahead and check out this first. So we have added this one here. I'll just close this. Let's check out the master branch, and fun stuff here. Oops, my bad. Have to write it properly. Master branch. If I go into the master branch, open this up, footer added. Okay. Close this. I come back here and I go ahead and say git checkout footer. I go back here and I see the index file footer was added successfully. This is a point of conflict, and we need to discuss this, how things actually happen. So the whole point is, so far we have been into this whole good situation, whether the main branch was not doing anything, whole work was done on the another branch. So we just went ahead and merged all together, and the timeline goes again like this. This is pretty good, interesting, nothing bad. And there is not fast forward merge, which is in which the main branch is also working and the another branch is also working. But the whole point is they were working on the different files, so there was nothing too much worried about. We just made the commit. But in the real world scenario, this is where the things gets tricky and Git. So the whole idea is Git always tries its best to resolve these conflicts. Right now we have a conflict, but Git tries automatically. But Git is not an AI. And of course, even AI cannot tell you which code to keep, which code to delete. So Git tries its best to resolve the conflict, but whenever there's such conflict happens, we need to understand that how these conflicts are resolved and how the diagrams actually work on with this. So first of all, we need to understand this diagram here. The green line or the head is actually going to be pointing towards, this is the branch which you are on. Like for example, we are on the master branch. We are trying to bring in the code from the footer. So everything above these equal signs, there will be a lot of equal sign. I'll show you that in the code as well. Everything above here, this is the part of the main branch. And anything below these equal signs, these are the part which are coming in from another branch. And we have to learn how we have to actually resolve this conflict. And there is nothing to it. Its whole thing is that which part of the code you want to keep, whether you want to keep this one, whether you want to keep this one, or you want to keep both. It's totally up to you. You can remove anything, all these codes, and there is no shortcut for this one. You have to manually go into the code part and have to consult with another friend that, hey, what you have done, I've also done this work, which part to keep, or do you need to update your code and then send me, can we merge the branch, something like this. So this needs to be a discussion. So whole idea is whether you go ahead, work with this. And by the way, you have to remove all these head, whatever these fancy things are going to come up, these equal signs and these ones. Just remove all of them. Just keep the code that you want to have, save it, and that's it. So that's what it says. Keep whatever you want, remove the marker and save, and that's all it's going to do. So yep, it's not really that bad. The whole thing is that people assume that it's going to happen automatically. No, it doesn't. It doesn't happen automatically. So let's go ahead and check out where I am. So I'm going to go ahead and work on with the branch. I'm on footer. I would love to check out on the master branch. So let's go ahead and work on with the master. There we go. Oh, what's the situation now, branch? I am on master and there's code in the footer. I would love to now merge the branch. So let's go ahead and say git merge and I want to merge the footer branch. Pretty easy, standard stuff. Once I do this, it says auto merging index, conflict, merge conflict index, auto merging failed, fix conflicts, and then commit the result. So notice here, if I go ahead and open this up, now your code editor looks a little different, and depends on what is your default code editor. There is also resolve in merge editor. There is a merge editor here as well, by the way. So this is how it looks like. A lot of people get afraid of this. Nothing to be afraid. This is all good. So notice here it says these are the, you can, by the way, VS Code also gives you really nice options at the top that you can accept the current change, you can accept the incoming change, or you can accept the both. By the way, this is good of VS Code, but I'll tell you what this is. Now notice here this head, this is footer edit. This was something which is in the master branch. Footer edit successfully was the footer branch code. Now it's totally up to you which one you want to keep, or you want to keep both. Totally your decision, your call. But notice here how similar this is from the diagram that we studied. Exactly. The top part is coming up. This top part is coming up from your main branch, master branch. This everything below the equal sign is coming up from the incoming branch or incoming merge that you are going through with. Exactly same. Nothing changed here. Now here's the interesting thing. You can go ahead and click on these buttons. I will not do that. You try that because it's much more easier there. I'll show you how the hard part is being done. So I can just come up here and say that, hey, let's just go ahead and remove this. And we definitely want to remove this part. We want to remove this part. I think this footer message is much more better. So I'll just go ahead and remove this footer edit. I'll remove this one here as well. So this is best. I'll go ahead and save this. And I go back here and notice here it automatically fixes this up, and I can just close this again and start this again. And this is nice. By the way, in the VS Code, you can click on the resolve in merge editor, and this opens up a totally new editor and all of these things, and it's much more easier. It helps you to actually compare what's in the footer branch, what's in the master branch. I'll just say complete the merge. Complete with conflict. Yeah. Close with conflicts, whatever that is. I am not worried much about this code base here, but you get the point. Which one you want to keep, it's totally up to you. Now the branches are definitely merged, so I can go ahead and check out this, and definitely we do have some of the commits that we have to make. By the way, I can make these commits from here as well, but I would love to make these commits merge footer branch and all of these things. So we can just go ahead and add this since we have manually merged this. So I'll just go ahead and say git add whatever that is, and let's just go ahead and git commit, and I'll be saying that we have merged footer branch, and there we go. Now everything looks good, should be all okay, and everything looks good. The footer was added successfully is the message that we are accepting instead of the one. So you have to pick one. You can pick both as well, nobody's stopping you, but this is how it goes. Now, interestingly, let's go ahead and check out how the timeline looks like. Exactly same as before. We started with this, we went into this one. Now this is also, we started with this one, we did some commits and footer index. This is how we solved the conflicts. So again, a lot of people I've seen are too much worried about the conflicts. There is nothing to be worried. It's just these extra equal signs and arrow signs which bothers a lot of people. VS Code does a pretty good job, but yeah, you got this one. There's a lot more to discuss and talk about this, but we're going to do that in the upcoming video. Right now, I think this is more than enough for us for the discussion. Let's go ahead and catch up in the next video. Hope you're enjoying. If you're enjoying, do let me know in the comment section. I'll catch you up in the next one. Folks, my name is Hitesh. Hope you're doing good, and we are continuing our series on the Git. And in this video, we're going to learn just about the two commands. You'll be using them often, one quite more than the other. The first is going to be Git Diff, which tells about the differences, and I'll talk more about this one. And another one we are going to talk about is the stashing command. Now, the stashing is also pretty interesting and a fun concept, and you'll be using them more than you think about it. My throat is a little itchy, but anyways, let's go ahead and talk about them. And one thing I would like to mention here is that the git diff command is something that you should watch out. There are tons of flows of that. I'll not talk about each and every flow, but I'll give you enough of knowledge that you can figure out things on your own. But be very careful about how you interpret these symbols here. So I'll walk you through with that as well. First of all, let me share the screen with you. We are on our notes section here. And as you know, this is where we have been working things. And these are our directories that are working. So Pretty simple stuff that we're going through. So first of all, let's understand about the Git Diff, then we'll do the practical. We'll read about the Git stash and we'll do the practical, just like we have always been doing. All right. So the first is the Git Diff. Now, the Git Diff command shows you the differences. And the one common thing that you're going to notice about this Git Diff command is, of course, it shows the differences, but it's not the difference between file A and file B. That is the most common mistake. Git Diff command actually shows you the difference between the same file, the file A and the file A. The only difference is it shows you the version of that file in some X time and the Y time. What do I mean by that? Simply, let's just say you're working on a file and you have staged some changes. Now you want to compare how the file looked like when the things were not staged and now they are in the stage. So that's the comparison you want to do. Maybe the comparison is, how does this exact same file look like when I committed it 2 commits before and now I committed it? How does those 2 commits actually compare? Or how does the same file looks between this branch and the other branch? That's the whole idea. A lot of people make this mistake of assuming that the Git Diff is for comparing 2 different files. Although there are tools which can do that, but this is not it's meant for, especially in the Git ecosystem. And one more important thing about the Git Diff is, how do you read the file? This is where the common mistakes comes up. And I don't blame it to anyone. It's the symbols which makes it confusing. Now you'll see these kinds of minus symbol and these plus symbol quite often. And this doesn't mean that the minus means the things which are removed and the plus means things which are added. And this is a common mistake I've seen, especially for beginners or people who are in college, fresh out of college, that plus means the files which are being added. No. That is not how we read the things. So notice here, the A is going to be a representation of file 1 and B is also going to be file representation of, for now we are calling it as file 2, but it's actually the same file. I've mentioned this same file over the time. But for the sake of simplicity, we are calling it as a file 2. Obviously, it is a file 2 now because the information got changed. That's the only reason. Again, remember the note, same file over the time. Okay, hope we are clear. Now, this file A is being represented by this minus symbol. That's it. Yes, it is represented by these symbols. Now, it could be other symbols. It could have been chosen as @. This could have been chosen as the hash. There would be much less confusion. But what can we say? This is the chosen one by the creator of the Git. We cannot say anything to him. He's legendary programmer. So somehow he decided that for the file 1, I'll choose the minus symbol, and file 2, I'll say plus symbol. And I'll show you when we run the command, we can sometimes actually interchange the branches. So this is branch A, this is branch B. And sometimes when we interchange that, these symbols get interchanged. So never assume that these are for removing the code and these are for the adding the code. No, it doesn't work like that. So change in line and the little preview of it, we are going to see that how to read these things. Pretty easy, pretty fun to watch around. So we're going to go ahead and now do these things in the practical way. I think that would be much more fun. All right. So what's our situation right now? I would love to see by running the Git status, and we have nothing to commit. We are on master branch. Now you can actually see the whole message and can understand it. And our working tree is clean. There is nothing which is changed and should be moved to the stage. So now you are actually able to understand this whole thing much better. And all these things are pretty good. I love these blocks here, by the way. You can copy and paste. I can actually copy the entire thing and can make a documentation out of it. That's fun. Anyways, so let's go ahead and change the index file and see what things happen. So we can see there is a lot of empty spaces here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these empty spaces. All right. And let's add something here. So what should we add? Navbar at the top. That would be fun. Let's go ahead. I would love to add navbar. My keyboard is a little far away because the iPad is taking a lot of space here. I would love to add navbar here. And that's it. And probably I'll just go ahead and say look good as project. Look good project. So this is the thing that I have added now. And obviously when I go ahead and check the Git status again, it says, hey, there is one file which is being modified. So what we'd love to do is we would love to add this file to the staging area. So the easiest thing is let's just go ahead and add the index.html. There we go. Now, if I go ahead and check the status again, we have something in the staging area and something outside as well, which is not being changed. Now, this is exactly the place where you can run the command of the git diff. First of all, let's go ahead and run the git diff command and see what happens when I run it in this exact mode. nothing happens. That's exactly how it is actually intended to work on with this, because hey, this is really basic command, and on its own it doesn't do much on its own, that hey, what should I do or something like that. Now what happens is when you provide some of the options to show your intention, what I really want to do. So for example, if I go ahead and let's just see, the command line is suggesting us that hey, just run this file and see what happens. When I go ahead and do this, it does nothing, obviously. But there are options, my bad. There are options, like I can go ahead and say I want to learn about the staged. That's the option, which is the first useful option. If I go ahead and use this, there is a way how we should learn to read this message, how it goes on. Let's go ahead and work on with this. First of all, dash dash staged. Obviously, I want to compare the file which is in the current stage as well as in the stage stage. So there are two versions of the same file. If there are multiple files, obviously it will show us the multiple blocks of output for that. So don't just assume that we can only check the output and the differences between the one file. You can check with hundreds of files, and even in the production, everybody does that. Now it says that, hey, this is a Git Diff which is checking between a file A and file B. File A is also index.html and file B is also index.html, and it's always going to be the case. Now there's also an indexing being given between the two commits and some messages around here. Don't want to go into too much of depth of it. Yes, this is also a file code that Git actually keeps it for themselves, even without staging, but let's not go into the file code as of now. Now the next thing is this minus 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 represents the file A and the plus 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 represents the file B. This doesn't mean that this is code removed or this is code being added. The negative negative assumes that this is file before staging and this is after staging. So this says that before it looked like this. There was a lot of negative spaces or just the spaces, and it said looks good as a project. But as you moved on to the staging area, you have changed this, and this is the newer code or the newer version of the file that we have. I would love to add navbar and looks good project. So this is what we have done. Now just to show you that we can do a little bit more is let's go ahead and change the footer as well to see that how things actually looks. So nice footer 2024. I don't like it. Probably add some awesome footer here. That would be a better message. Now let's go ahead and stage this one as well. So staging is pretty simple. We go ahead and say this time we want to add a footer to the staging area. And if I go ahead and check the git staging, git status, 2 files are being added. Now let's go ahead and check out the git diff as well. And only option I'm providing here is -- staged. Okay, let's see. Now we have a little bit of a different syntax. And again, notice here the colon. So it's opening this up whole thing in the Vim mode. Don't worry, I'll show you how to get out of the Vim. You'll not be forever stuck into this one. But if you notice this, same thing happens. Now we are comparing the footer file here, and here we are comparing the index file. So we are comparing always the same file, but in the different time zone. Not time zone exactly, but in the different time itself. How it looked like previously and how it looked like after the staging. And it looks good, and there we go, we can see, and it never shows you the whole file itself. It just shows you some of the glimpse of it. And yes, there are tools around it, some GUI tools like GitKraken and a lot of others, which actually shows you much more information than this. So notice here in the footer, this was the file before, and this is the file now. And this is how it looks like. So there we go, we can see that no new line at the end of the file. And there we go, we can see the index file here, which has some of the looks good and all these things. And you can actually go ahead into the full mode of the Vim, but right now I'll just press Q to exit it, that hey, I'm okay, I'm fine by looking at it. By the way, GitHub shows you entire long documentation of seeing this. Now, apart from this, now I would like to make a commit. So let's go ahead and make a commit. There we go. And what we're going to do is, let's say commit messages change index and footer. Not really a good message, but I'll just go with that. So we're going to go ahead and add this one. And now let's just for a moment, I want to see the git log, but one line logs. Now head is pointing towards this one, and we have this merge branch. And exactly like this, you can actually check out the different merge options. If you want to check out between the different commit IDs, you can go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and see what happened between this commit ID and this commit ID. Let's see what happened there. It's a little bit difficult to actually use that, but not in my case. I'm using a nice terminal here so I can copy paste the things. All you have to do is copy this, paste it up here, then a space, and then we're going to paste this one so that we can go ahead and check this out. Now you do this, so you get the entire thing again that, hey, nice footer was previously in the previous commit ID. Now this was in the this commit ID, and things looks good. Again, I can press Q and get the exit. So you get the idea how this is being done. You will see another kind of a thing with the exact same commit IDs or maybe different branch name also. You just remove the space, you put 2 dots, common scenario, alternative way of how it's being done, gives you the exact same result, but you'll see that a lot of people use that. So that's the fun part as well. Now, similar to this, you can use the branches as well. I'll not show you that. I'll leave that as a simple exercise for you to do, but pretty simple. So all we can do is simply have to say git and then diff, and then we can go ahead and say branch 1, probably that's it, dot dot, and then we can use branch 2. And again, dot dot is pretty safest of the feature because it actually is a previous compatible as well. The space one is the newest one. So maybe you're working in some scenario where the space one doesn't work. Now you know you can use the dots as well. So pretty easy to work on with that. And again, the output will be same regardless of you work with the commit IDs, you work with the branches, files, and however you work and go through with that. The output is going to be exactly same. Okay, now let's go back on to this one. So now that we understand the inside and the details of how the Git Diff work, and from now on you will never see that this minus minus as removed. It's a previous version, not the previous version in fact, it's just the file one, and that's it. And this is a common thing when you switch your branch comparison, even the commit ID, when you switch them up, the first file will get the -1s and the second file will get the +1. We can even try that actually. Let me just go ahead and work with that, and I'll just go ahead and say git log 1 line, and there we go. So previously we did gave it like this. Now let's go ahead and 9C11. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove this, and in fact we'll just go here and we'll just change this. So even just by changing this, you'll notice that there we go. Now this adds some footer note here, a nice footer. The plus and minus got changed here. So this is really interesting. Notice here, nice footer gets a plus. And if I go ahead and quit this, and if I go ahead and use this, now the nice footer gets the -1. So I told you, it's not really the removing of the code or adding the code, it's just a symbol. It's just a symbol. All right. So moving on, let's go ahead and talk about some of the Git stashing. All right, so moving on about the Git stashing. Git stashing is pretty interesting and fun of the tool or the subtool in the Git itself. Let's go ahead and understand that. I don't know why it's not highlighted, but we're going to talk about the Git stash. Okay, so what this Git stash, all we have to do, we'll go through with the workflow first, understand the thing, then we'll do the practical of it. So first what we have to do is create a repo, we have to work on it, and then commit it on the main. So the whole idea is there should be some work on the main branch, and the flow is then switch on to another branch and work on it. Very common scenario that maybe you found a bug, maybe you want to add some feature, you have pulled off a branch of it and you have started to work on your branch. But there is something important happened on other branch or maybe the main branch and you want to work there a little bit. Now, conflicting changes do not allow to switch the branch without commit. So what happened is if you have worked on something, you have probably staged it, not yet commit, or you have worked, something is there. The Git is not going to allow you to switch into the different branch. That's the one thing. So let's go ahead and try this, if how this is actually even true or how does it work. So let's go ahead and first of all git status. If I go ahead and work with the git status, there is nothing in the master branch, and that's okay, but we want to now create another branch. Right now we don't have much of the branches. If I go ahead and look on the branch, there is just master and there is a footer. Maybe now it's the time that we work on the footer branch. So let's go ahead and check out this, or maybe you are creating some another branch. So let's just go ahead and say git, and I'll use a switch. And you can, by the way, pass an option of -c. And let's just say you're working on some bugs. So we are going to call this one as bug fix, a very common scenario. Now this has created a new branch as well as moved you onto this new branch, shortcut command. So we're going to go ahead and check out the git branch. Notice we are on the bug fix. So you're on the bug fix and you realize there was a pretty nasty bug in the footer, index, navbar, wherever you like. This was the bug. So I went up and I'm fixing. trying to fix this bug. Okay, we are still in the mid of the fixing the bug. We haven't fixed it. So that's our situation right now. If I go ahead and check out the Git status, here there are some files which are not being staged or something, but your colleague says, hey, you know what? I need your help on some another branch. Can you please come to the footer branch and just add this or check this or just add this one line here? And you says, yeah, of course I can go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and say git switch and not C, but I would love to switch on to branch footer. There we go. Oh, it says your local changes to the following files would be overwritten. Please commit your changes or stash them. So now it's talking about the stash before you switch the branch, aborting. So where I am right now, let's just go ahead and check this with the git branch. I'm still on the bug fix. I haven't moved on the footer and I'm not able to change this. So that's what this note actually says, that if there is any change which is not even being staged and you have worked on something in your branch, obviously you have moved some file, you have changes, and you haven't committed them, you haven't staged them, so how can you move on to the different branch? This is where exactly the stash comes in, and even Git actually gave you a message, suggestive message, then you can use the git stash and you can switch between the branch. And by the way, there are a couple of other use cases and even complex commands of the git stashing, which a lot of people uses. I'll walk you through with them, but majority of the time you'll be just using these two commands, which is git stash and git stash pop. Let's see how they work. And I'll show you some of the complex commands as well, that how you can just go ahead and work with that. Let's go ahead into this one. So now I can run the command git stash. There we go. I run this git stash and it says, okay, there is a work in progress, bug fix, and something index folder. Now, can I change my branch now? That's the most important question. So if I go ahead and say git switch footer, if I go ahead and says, hey, you switched to the footer branch. And if I go ahead and say that, hey, show me the git branch, there we go. You are on the footer right now and you can start working on this. Does it change this? Yes, all of my changes are being stashed there. I'm not worried about there. They're working pretty nice and easy. I can see what is happening, can guide my colleague, or even can add more stuff on the index or something like that. Even can work on this and complete my commits and everything. But the great part about this is I can move on to the different branch now, and I can say git branch and move me back onto the bug fix. No suggestion, no suggestions. Hate that. Bug fix. Oh, git switch. My bad. Switch. Okay, now we are switched on to this one. I'll check this one. Okay, I'm here. But what about my changes? My changes are still not here, because I have stashed those changes. Stash is like a temporary shelf where you can keep your code, go back, move around, come back here, but you have to bring things back from the shelf here. And how do we do that? Pretty easy. Let me show you. It's just this command git stash pop. That's it. And that's the command. Git stash, and all you have to say is pop. Now you have this, so pop. So there we go. We are having this stuff back up here. Pretty nice and easy, but let's just say I've worked on it more, worked and fixed the bug, something like that. So there we go. We still are again onto the position where we haven't committed this. Now you know you cannot change the branch. So you would love to go ahead and use the git stash command. So we have stashed it. Now I want to move to the main branch. Let's just see how many branches we have. Git branch, we are onto the master. So let's just go ahead and switch to this one. Git switch, and I want to switch to master. All right, my bad. Master. There we go. We have moved to the master branch, and obviously these all things are gone. But here's the interesting thing. I know I have stashed some changes onto the bug fix branch, but can I actually pop those stash onto other branches? That's interesting. Let's go ahead and try this out. I'm going to go ahead and say git stash, and I'll just do a pop. And it says, oh, there's something interesting here. On branch master, changes not staged for commit, go ahead, and no changes added to the commit, dropped, some stuff. But okay, I can see that all my stash can actually come onto this master branch. And now I can do the changes, stages, and whole thing. So we can deduce from this small investigation that yes, stash is not just limited to your branch, and stash can be moved from this branch to different branches as well. But don't you worry, when you're working onto this one, with multiple people, be very careful of how you're stashing and all these things. And that is why people actually always stash with the other commands as well. So it's a pretty interesting command, but again, be very careful about this one because most of the people love to have this command first, git stash list. So once you do this, so for example, if I go ahead and again do a git stash, it stashes all the changes. But if I do a git stash list, now it gives me a list that this is a stash, which is which is work in progress on master branch. So don't just go ahead and dump the stash until you are working on the branch, because stashing can be a little bit tricky to work on with. So always be careful, just run the command git stash list and only stash or dump the stash which you really want to work with that. So for example, here in this case, I can just go ahead and run the command git stash apply, and then mention the stash, whatever the stash is. For example, if your in case is the stash 0, like this, or if you have the first one for yourself, second, third, whatever that is. You get the idea that how these things actually work. All right, so now that you know about the caveats of how the stashing and all these things work, I would love to give you a couple of more commands and all these things. Make sure you're looking up for is also a couple of commands like git stash list and git stash apply and the stash name entirely with the curly braces and 1 to whatever the number is. And most of the time, whatever and wherever you are working on, stash is something which is meant to be very, very temporarily. Maybe you want to just put your changes for a moment and then want to go some another branch, check these things, copy some code or somewhere and just move back onto your branch. This is entirely meant for a temporary purpose. You should not be relied on it too heavy. And even if you're working with the many people in a big company, these stashes should be used very, very carefully. So that's the whole idea. Now let me show you a couple of more commands, and I'm pretty sure you can do some exercise on it, and we'll talk about this one. So what you can do is, so far we have used the command of checkout. I'll show you the demo of this one, and this checkout actually goes ahead and we have used it for the branching checkout from git checkout branch, master, git checkout to footer and all these things. But it can also be used for checking out how the things looks like before the commits and all these things. You can provide the hash, or you can use the symbol of head, and this tilde means I want to go 2 commits back. So this 2 here represents, look at the 2 commit prior to this one. I'll show you this one as well. And by the way, you can restore any file as well. The restore command is also pretty interesting. Go ahead, try this out. And you can restore the file back to the last commit only, not the, like you cannot go forever. You can check with the checkout command that how files look like, but you can only restore till the one last command. Now let's go ahead and see how the checkout looks like and see how things actually work. So for this, obviously we need to have a git log. So let's go with that. Now somehow I want to move how the things look like onto this particular commit. So all you have to do is just run the command git checkout, and instead of giving this as a master or branch name, give the commit ID. And again, you don't need to give the entire long commit ID. This one works like 99.99% of the cases. I'm not sure about one edge case there, but it works like that. So I can go ahead and work with that git checkout and just work like this. And notice here what says the head is now at this position. So I told you this whole thing that we have in the git, this is something which has to point somewhere, this head. And usually this points towards at the very tip of wherever you are working right now, but we have explicitly asked it to move back somewhere. So that's where the head is. And during that time when we worked on this, there was no navbar, there was no footer file, and this is how our file looked like. So I can go back, jump into the time and check out any point of the time. But the point is, how do I go back? That's the main interesting part. So do I have to git log again? Because hi, there is a head hero section here. How do I retrieve back? So let's go ahead and try this. Can I go ahead and use this git checkout head? Let's see what happened here. This doesn't go back. So what can I do to go back if I have checked out onto the previous branches? Now moving back is a little bit tricky, not really complex, but there are a couple of ways how you can go back. And let me show you what are these ways actually. The easiest one that you're going to find is, where am I writing? Is simply go ahead and say git checkout, and instead of saying head or something like that, you just go ahead and say, I want to go back to the main branch, or in this case, the master. That's one thing. I can go ahead and do this. You have switched to the master and all of this. And we can see once you mention the name of the branch, it moves you back onto wherever you were. In case you forget this, what you can do is there is also one command which is rarely used in the any flow is simply say git reflog. What does this command does? Reflog actually moves you back onto where you were previously. It just moves your head back to wherever you were. So in case you forgot from where you came in or something, you can use this, but rarely being used. Rarely somebody just check out and then just like it's everybody's flow that instead of mentioning the exact thing or something, we just mention the branch name. This is a common flow. But yes, again, there are many ways of how you can go back. So you get the idea of now you can check this out any point of time that I want to go head should be now on 2 commits back or 1 commits back. Let's just say we want to move it here. So this is 2 commits back. So we can go ahead and say git checkout and we want to point the head. And we can use tilde and move it to 2 back. And there we go. So we have now head is now at CB9E. Where is CB9E? And we are here, CB9E. So oops, we are 1 and 2 and it moves it here, CB9E. So be very careful where it's moving and be cautious about it. So that's all I'm saying. So there we go. This is how it was looking like. And again, my usual flow is just go ahead and say git checkout and then move to master. So that's it. That's usually what I do. But again, it's up to you. You want to use reflog. You want to go with that. Totally on you. Totally on you. All right. So a couple of more commands. So again, we have worked on with the git checkout and we can use the hash. We can actually go ahead and use the head command. We can use the specific commit ID to move there, whichever suits you, whichever works for you. And even we little bit talk about the reflog as well. So go ahead and work with that in case you want to with that. It's a pretty easy command. So that's it for this video. I hope you have enjoyed this one. So if you're enjoying these, please do let me know in the comment section, tweet out about the series because your tweets, your share on the LinkedIn, this is the only thing which keeps me going. This is my motivation and I would love to get some more motivation at this point of time. That's it for this video. Let's catch up in the next one. Hey there everyone, my name is Hitesh and welcome to the series on the Git. Today's topic is pretty interesting, which is a little bit scary as well. We're going to talk about the Git rebase. I'll walk you through what are the caveats of it, what could be the accidents that can happen with this command, but all under control. You'll have full knowledge about when to use this command, when to avoid this command, and you'll not be scared of it. And there are a couple of scenarios that I would like to talk before jumping into this command. First of all, if you haven't checked out my channel or haven't yet subscribed, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. It would be really, really motivational for me. Or if you can share this series, that would be fantastic. I've put a lot of effort into this. Your one share, that's the price of this course. That's it. All right. So first of all, let me share a simple scenario. So what we're going to learn about this one, this git rebase command, you'll find the entire internet is kind of divided into 2 halves and one half is on the 90%, which is scared of this command. And only 10% of the folks actually love this, who have used this extensively, and they really know what they are doing. It's not that scary of a command, but it always does rewrite the history. And when you're rewriting the history, you should be cautious. And that's what this command exactly does. I'll tell you a personal scenario. When I was working as a CTO in one of the company here in India, and in that we were organizing a lot of hackathons in our company. And a group of students came in and they accidentally ran the rebase command wrong way in the last 1 hour of the hackathon. And their entire project got messed up and they couldn't participate. So yes, you should be careful with this. I'm not sharing the horror stories. I'm just sharing what happened there. The truth happened there. And you should be cautious about it. That's all I'm going to say. And now let's go back onto the code and walk you through with how actually it goes on and work with that. So let me share the screen. All right, so where we are right now, let's go ahead and check the Git status for this. And my keyboard is too far on the left. I don't like it that way, but what can I do? So let's go ahead and say I want to run the Git status. Everything is good on the master branch. And how many branches do we have? And by the way, I love this feature that I can scroll this and can say I want to learn or I want to run the command, the Git branch. So I can just go with that. I love this. So we have a couple of branches, couple of things going on. Everything is well sorted, well centered up here. Let's go ahead and first run about what happens when you run the git rebase command. Again, the red smiley here with saying, hey, be cautious about it. So this command can be used as an alternative way of merging or can be used up as a cleanup tool. Cleanup tool because it rewrites the history, and an alternative of merging because it literally performs the merging. But in the merging, you actually keeps your branches separately, but it just merge everything into a single timeline. This is how the output is something which you'll see when you rebase, and this is kind of an output you see when you actually do the branch merging. So yes, this is exactly like merging. We already have seen quite in depth about how the merging works, but now we're going to see how the rebasing of the stuff works. All right. I'm not going to go through again with the merging process. You're quite familiar with that. Whenever we do the git merge, it actually merges the code into the main branch, or wherever you are merging, you can just go ahead and work with that. Now we'll focus more on the rebase, but I'll walk you through with the branching scenario as well a little bit. We'll go through with the demo quite in depth. Now here is a caution note. Whenever you are either on the main branch, or in this case, we are going through with the master quite a lot, or the master branch, never run this command. I repeat this again. If you are on the main branch or master branch, this command is not meant to be run from that branch. This command is usually meant to be run from the side branch that we are, whether that's a bug fix, footer, feature, whatever that branch is. Usually this is meant to be run from the branch itself, not the main. This is usually the guidelines which everybody puts out. Whoever has worked in the big large scale corporation, this is usually the guideline. But again, we're going to go through. So again, don't worry about all these big long commands that we have here. We have really long ones. You don't have to worry too much. This is just walking you through that how the whole flow actually works. But since I'm with you, I can just go ahead and work through with that. All right, so let's see what happens. So first of all, we are on the master. So let's just say what happens now is we go through, and by the way, we'll be keeping an eye on this one. So this is whole things going on and how the things are working with. We are more interested in this diagram because this is the only thing we have. All right, so first of all, let's go ahead and work a little bit. So in the index section, we come up here and we say, this looks nice. Oops, again, keyboard is a little shifted. This looks nice. I save this. I go ahead and check the git status. You obviously know what's about to happen. There is one untracked file. We're going to go ahead and commit this. This time I'm going to use -am, which is another shortcut of adding and committing at the same time. So we're going to say updated main website. Looks good. And we have done the commit. Now where we are at this position. Looks good. If I check this one and I check the UI, now we can see that there is some work that is being done in this one. We have some stashed being onto this branch as well. What this branch is, if you can just go ahead and click on this, you can just see this is the footer branch that we are working through. We're not much worried about the footer branch. That's okay. That's fine. I'm not worried on that branch. Let's just say there is another branch. Let's just go ahead and see this one. There is another branch which is the bug fix, and let's go on to this bug fix branch. I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, let's check out the bug fix. Bug fix. And now I am on the bug fix branch. Let's go ahead. We work a little bit on the bug fix branch. I fixed the navigation bar bugs. Maybe we have to contact us was not working. I will just cut this out. I'll just use an anchor tag. It's not going anywhere. This was the bug. Let's just assume. I'll just say contact us. Now the bug is being fixed. All right. But if I go ahead and check it out at this point, my bug is fixed. Let's go ahead and git, and we're going to go ahead and commit. And we're going to go ahead and say, let's just say the bug is fixed, but I still need to work a little bit more onto this one. So I'm going to go ahead and say updated navbar. That's nice. There we go. In the meantime, I want to go ahead and do some more work on the master branch. So let's just go ahead and do git checkout. And we want to go on to master branch. There we go. And in the meantime, the master is also working. If I check the git branch, we have this one working on this one. So I guess that's my, not in the commit. This one is, but we have updated the main website. So this is the pink one. And in the meanwhile, there is some more work on the index file that was done. And I want to say, what do we do on this main website? Maybe some gallery was added, some images were added, So there we go. Images is being added. And what do we want to do? Commit. Git commit and same. And we're going to say images added. All right. Now let's check out another branch. And again, this is kind of a workflow that we have to go through. I'm not making this up. So let's go into the bug fix again. And there we go. Now, when I go into the bug fix, obviously the index file is having nothing, but it would be really nice if I could bring in the whole code base from the main branch into this branch. That would be really nice. And this happens quite often, more than you think, that we go ahead and merge the main branch into our bug fix branch. So whatever has happened on the main branch can come onto my branch and I can see what's the latest update. Quite common thing. So we're going to go ahead and say git merge, and this time I want to merge. So wherever I am, first of all, I need to check that. I'm on to bug fix and I'm going to go ahead and say git merge. And this time I want to merge the main branch or the master in this case. By the way, the main and master, you might see me often exchanging the name between main and master. There's a history of it. Let me share it with you. So initial days when the Git was designed, everything was called as master branch. In fact, in a lot of other DevOps tools like Kubernetes and all these things, we used to call one master and others as slave. And somehow some people find that offending. So nowadays we call everything as main and others as regular branches. So that's why Git is a pretty old software, still does the main branch as the master. But on the GitHub, they don't want to have any conflict, so they call it as main branch. So main and master are literally the same. They are just the branch name. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the merge master. Once I go ahead and do the merging of the master, it says, hey, there's now editor. This is usually the default message. I'll go with this only. Merge main master branch into the bug fix. I go ahead and save this and close it and go back up here. So files are being added. Now, everything looks good. If I go ahead where I am right now, I am onto the bug fix. If I go ahead and check out the bug fix, onto the index, all of these images and everything came onto my picture. But what some people don't like is this guy. So now there's this extra commit that, hey, there's whole things going on. Now, again, I can start working on this. I'm still on bug fix. I'm still working on the navbar bug fix. And this about us is the link which was not working. So I added an anchor tag, goes nowhere, and about us. So we have added some more stuff and we worked on to this one. We will be adding a commit message and I'll say more bug fixed, or I'll say about us fixed. These are really bad commit messages, but somehow we work with that. And if I check this Git branch, that again, master is doing nothing and all of these things. But in the meantime, you went up and changed this one. Yes, we need to go through with this whole workflow so that you get the idea of how things actually works in the real life. I'll go ahead and do a checkout and I'll check out onto the master and git checkout, and my bad, need to run master. Now we are on the master branch. We are still working on index file. Images, pricing card, added. All right, so we have added the pricing card. The throat is still itchy, but anyways, a pricing card being added. I want to add this and I'll say pricing card added. All right. Let's see what's the situation of this. All right. Now more work is done on this one. So there will be new commits being added. This is how the life is. Now you want to get all those commits that are being done on the main branch being migrated onto your feature branch or the bug fix branch, wherever you are. So this is something which is bothering to a lot of people, that if I go ahead and check out the git log in one line, you'll notice a lot of commits are just the merging commits. So this is the merge of the navbar. This is merge of the footer branch. These commits are not actually putting any work. They are just merging. And same thing is happening if I go ahead and do checkout onto the bug fix branch and do the git log again. Why my cursor went away? And I go ahead and do this again. Notice here, the same thing is happening here. We merge this. So these are unnecessary commits that are going through and a lot of people don't like it. So what do they do? Let me show you. Now, first and foremost, the most important thing to learn about this is where you are. So never be hesitant to run the Git branch. I am on bug fix. this is where I can run the command of rebase. If you are in the master and run the rebase, the whole mess is on you, not on me. Make sure you understand this key point. So now what we're going to do is, now we want to bring all those changes here. So I'm going to go ahead and say I want to do a rebase. All right. But rebase needs to run on the master branch. So this is the command that you usually want to run. Git rebase main or git rebase master. This indicates that I'm rebasing my branch with the master. You don't want to mess up the master branch or the main branch. Now notice here what happens when I run this command. Rebase successfully. And now what you can see, the timeline is being rewritten. The timeline is rewritten. This is scary because now the main timeline is, it's literally rebasing. What we are doing is rebasing. That means we still have two branches here, but this is my main branch and its base is now here. So this is the point of its base. So this is the most important part. We still have branch, we still have two heads. These are just the pointers which can point on to different points or different commit IDs. But this is my branch. This is literally, you have taken the branch and have replanted it on the master. This is scary. This is because you are rewriting the history. At this point, probably you might not be able to understand the severity of it, but notice here the branch is entirely gone. It's just the master. And if any more changes, we will obviously be diverting into the branches. If any more work is done on the bug fix, more branches, we'll see those colors online. It's not like we have entirely removed it for the future as well. They will exist. I'll show you that. But this is the point where things actually gets a little bit scary. So again, checking where I am onto the bug fix branch. So if I go ahead and add some more stuff, maybe I'm fixing the same nav bar. Let's just cut this out. Oops, not like that. I'm going to go ahead and cut this out, add the anchor tab, goes nowhere. Home tab is also fixed now. So let's just go ahead and commit this, git commit, and we're going to go ahead and say that home tab fixed. Not really a big fix, but maybe that's 1,000-line code. I'm going to go ahead and you're going to see this in the commits ID git graph now that yes, the fix actually is now the same on the home branch and also as well as on the bug fix. But the moment you'll do some more things on the master branch, you'll see the commits ID being changed. So we're going to go ahead and say, hey, let's go ahead and check out the master. There we go. Do some changes on the master. We are doing more changes in the index, pricing card. What else? We have YS section being added. Go ahead, save this. Do the commit YS section added. Go ahead and run this one. And let's see the git graph. There we go. We can see the branching is here. So it's not like we have completely removed that you cannot have branches ever. But here is the interesting part where we have no idea of how the branching came in, bug fixes. We have just merged it. And even if you look at the commits, the unnecessary commits that were there, like merge the branch, those commits are gone. That's the whole idea about the rebasing. And in case you are wondering what happens when there is a conflict, exactly same what happened in the branch. When you merge the branches, when you merge the rebase, it's exactly same. If there is a conflicting file, you have to remove the conflicts manually or use the VS Code to accept the changes and all of that, and you have to run another command. So interested in doing the conflicts? Why not? Let's go ahead and do the conflicts. We are on to the branch of master. All right, so let's just say the master has worked on it. Let's go ahead and check out on to the bug fix as well. And we're going to go git checkout, and we're going to go on to bug fix. And this bug fix guy comes into the index and says pricing card added. And he also says new pricing card. New pricing card added. So we are working on the same file. Some stuff is being added. Which one to keep, which one not to keep, it's up to you. I'll just save this because we are here to make conflicts. Let's go ahead and do the commits. And I'm going to go ahead and say card added to index file, not added. Add card to index file. Usually you want to give the command to get it on that. Again, let's go ahead and work with that. So now what happened is, hey, there is a conflict in this, and let's just go ahead and run the branch. We are on the bug fix, so it's safe to run the command if I'm on the branch, I can merge or rebase from the master. Let's go ahead and see what happens when I try to rebase. Let's go ahead and find out the command that we want to run, rebase the master. I do this and it says rebasing, couldn't do the rebase because there is a conflict here. And here are a couple of hints. You really don't want to skip this part. Read this entire whole message. If you're not going to be reading it, you'll not understand the rebase. So go ahead and follow this. It says resolve all the conflicts manually, mark them as resolved with hint. Then you have to run the git add or remove the conflicted file. So you have to run the command git add. Yep, that's the thing. And then run the git rebase, and my terminal is a little short. Can I expand it? Yep, and there we go. Whole thing in one line. Now it's better. All right. Notice here, this is the one that I want to get your attention to. You have to add this. This is the first part of it, and then you have to run the git rebase -- continue. That means the rebase right now is in the halt phase. You have to resolve your conflicts and then I can continue the rebase. If somehow you find it a little bit scary, you can go ahead and use the -- abort command as well to abort the entire thing. If I go back onto this one here, notice here, this is the resolved all these things. And you can just click on this accept changes. Last time I showed you how you can do this manually by removing all of this. This time I'll show you how you can use VS Code. I'll say that accept the current change, accept the incoming change, or accept the both. I'll accept the incoming change, which is coming up from the master branch. I'll accept this. This is how it looks like, new pricing card added. And I'll go ahead and save this, but that's not enough. I need to go ahead and literally come back here and add this. And again, you don't have to commit this, you just have to add this. So I'm going to go ahead and say git add. In this case, it's just one file, but you can use the dot. Feel free to use that. I'll just go ahead and add this, but that's not enough. Now it needs to be only in the staging area. Now you can continue this. But if you go ahead and check the git graph, notice here, uncommitted changes and all these things. It's an ongoing thing, so don't just worry too much about it. And we're going to go ahead and say git rebase and the -- option. -- continue. Thank you so much. And by the way, if you hover onto this one, it says restart all these options. I love this editor. Restart the rebasing process after having resolved conflict merging. Really nice. I hit enter and it says add card to the index. So now it's asking you for the commit message. I'm happy with this commit message. I'll save this, close this file, and you get that. Now finally the rebasing is completed. So there is no such thing as like automatic conflict resolver or something, but we get to see this. That whole thing is again just a one timeline. So literally we are actually changing the timeline. So it took us a little bit time to actually understand that how the workflow and everything is done. But I think by now you actually truly understand what the rebase is. And again, I would like to bring you one more thing up here, that again, never rebase the commits that you have shared with other people. And if we are pushing to the GitHub, never rebase is usually the idea. But again, it's not like I'm against the rebase. You can rebase, and some companies do actually ask you to rebase all the time. Some people like to keep their commit history being very, very clean and not unnecessary commit. That's okay. That's the workflow you will learn. Some people have the workflow or their experience with too much rebasing. Some people rarely have done the rebasing. So it's up to them. They are scared of it or not. I am little bit, but I know when I'm rebasing what I'm doing. So that's the whole idea. So the whole point of the picture is rebase is not that scary. It's just you need to know what you are doing. If you know that what you are doing, it's always a good idea. And again, never do the rebase when you are on the master branch. Always do the rebasing when you are on the bug fix branches or some other branches. That's the workflow I've done. But again, your workflow might be different or something else. So that's your rebase. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, do tweet out this video or the entire video, however you like that. Let's catch up in the next video. Hey there everyone, Hitesh here, back again with another video, and welcome to the Git series. And Git series cannot be completed without talking about GitHub. And yes, I know, GitHub is not the only way of saving your Git workflow or entire code base onto an online service. There are others as well. But hey, we cannot do anything. The popular one is the popular one. I don't decide the popularity. So the popularity is with the GitHub. So in this video, we're going to see a little bit of the GitHub and how the workflow actually goes through with that. Now, I am pretty sure some of the beginners who are afraid of doing the things on their own and absolutely hate to read the documentation are going to complain a little bit on this video. And the reason is obvious, because I'm going to mention you some of the documentation via the GitHub, and I'm going to ask you to do some things on your own. People don't like to do things on their own, and that's the reason they leave programming. My advice, read the docs, try to do things on your own. At a max, you're going to just fail, and you're going to find solution on some Medium article or ChatGPT or some other Stack Overflow, but it's compulsory and important to read the docs and do some things on your own. And there is a reason behind it. I'll walk you through with that as well. And we'll share you some of the important information. If you're going to the GitHub, obviously we'll have a discussion about the open source contribution. You need to know what are the cons of it first, because there was recently an incident. The entire world was very much unhappy with the incident. I'll share that incident as well. So be cautious about spamming anybody on that. We'll start with there. But let me show you first that why I'm saying that a lot of people will be unhappy with this video. Might be unhappy, not always, but might be. So, all right. So we are on to the docs.github, and we are on the getting started or get started page. This is the documentation of how the GitHub entire workflow goes through. And if you go on to this right hand side, you're going to see that onboarding, using GitHub, accessibility, explore projects, get started with the Git, and a whole lot of things are there. So using the Git, if you open up, this is how the Git subfolders and all these things are being used, and explore the integration, about the integration and whatnot. All these things are here. So using GitHub, you can see there is a GitHub mobile, onboarding is also there, how you can start your journey. There's a lot of things, how to create an account, hello world, finishing up and whatnot. Now, if you go ahead and search for this in this docs regarding the SSH, this is the one that you have to search. Just go ahead and search for SSH. Now, the reason for searching the SSH is that, first of all, let's go ahead and talk about the GitHub. So I'm going to open up this new one and we'll paste the GitHub here. So this is GitHub. This is one of the many such online services which helps you to keep all of your code base along with the Git maintenance and the Git timeline onto a cloud environment so that everything is safe. These days, we know that everything is on the cloud, and for obvious reason, there is no worry about your database getting corrupted, your hard disk getting corrupted. Everything is online on the cloud, and they manage all these things. And it's not the only service which is available. GitHub is the most popular one, but there is a GitLab. If you wish, you can just go ahead and explore them. We will definitely explore them together, maybe in upcoming videos, not sure about it. So yes, there are lots of such services. Coming back, this is the GitHub, which helps you to build, and there's a lot of options and a lot of things are available in here. We will not go much about them in this video. We'll definitely explore them in the upcoming video. But all you have to do is just sign up for that. Once you do the sign up, it's pretty easy. All you have to do is enter your email, verify the email, set a password, and that's it. You have your GitHub account. You are watching this on YouTube. You obviously have a YouTube account. That means you know how to create the account. Similarly, just go ahead and create an account on GitHub. Once you go ahead to create an account on GitHub, then simply working with the GitHub via the terminal is the most important thing. And you cannot just work with the terminal using your email ID and password. No, GitHub doesn't work like that. GitHub works with the SSH keys. So you have to generate some SSH key and have to save that same key in the GitHub settings page so that GitHub knows that you are the same guy who's communicating. The communication in the GitHub happens on the basis of SSH, not on the basis of email and password. Email and password works well on the web, not on the command line. And since you know, we have been working with the command line all throughout the long, and we want to use GitHub directly from here. By the way, you can also install a GH utility, which is a GitHub utility. You can work through with that. But first, anyways, since we want to connect the entire thing with the GitHub, we want to have an SSH key on our system. And we want to have an SSH key on the GitHub settings page so that both knows that, yeah, these are the same guys and communicating. So first and foremost, the problem is these are the two things we want to explore. Generating a new SSH key and adding it to the SSH agent. And the second one is adding a new SSH key in your GitHub account. These are the two things that we have to go through with. Let's go ahead and open this up in two separate tabs. And by the way, they are just one above each other. You can just get started with any of them. So the best part is, even if you click on Mac, Windows or Linux, the steps are exactly same, almost exactly same. The only thing you have to worry about is on the Windows, when you installed the Git SCM, remember we in the very first video went through the git-scm, you downloaded the Git. It also gives you a new terminal which is known as Git Bash, and I highly recommend to use it instead of the Windows command line. It's great, but I'm not a big fan of Windows command line. Go ahead and use the Git Bash. All the Linux command like ls, pwd, all of them work fine with the Git Bash. Now, once you have this is the something that you have to do on your own, and it's not much, trust me. So all you have to do is, whether you're on Windows or wherever you are, open up the Git Bash and run this command. This command, and make sure use the email ID which you have used to sign up on the GitHub. And then notice here, if you are using the legacy system, then only you have to use this one. Otherwise, we don't have to use this one. We will go with the latest key, this one. After that, simply go ahead and this creates a new SSH key using the provided email as a label. And it will generate this. Then you have to do is enter a file in which to save. So Windows user, obviously you can save it into users, u, and then .ssh, and the ID underscore algorithm. This underscore algorithm will be exactly this algorithm. So in this case, we are using ed25519. So this will be your file name, id underscore ed25519. So that will be your file name. Once you're done with this, then simply you have to enter the passphrase. If you can keep it empty, that's also fine. But whenever you'll make a GET request, you have to enter the same passphrase if you are setting one. I usually don't set one. I'm just happy without that. So once you're done with this, adding your SSH key to the agent, this is also you have to do. So all you have to do is just come up here, new admin elevate. So go ahead, use the PowerShell of the Windows and follow these commands. And that's it. You don't have to follow this step. Nope, nothing. You just have to work through with these two commands, get service name. This is just copy and paste. And then simply SSH add C drive and all of this. That's it. Copy paste stuff. That's it. If you are on a Mac, you have to do the exact same stuff on the Mac as well. Exactly same. In the Mac, also we have SSH key. So go ahead and use this. This is going to generate the same algorithm, but your algorithm will be saved on different place, which is /user/u/ and again ID underscore algorithm. This is important to know from directly the documentation itself, because these may change in the future. So it's better always to come here and find how to do the things. So this is what you have to do. Again, prompting and all of these are same for you. And for the Mac guys, this is what you have to run to make sure the SSH agent in the background. And then, hey, just open up this file and just create the file. Does it exist? Just go ahead and create this and just add this. So a couple of more steps for you, but that's it. Till here, that's the only thing you have to do. Do not do the things here, generate new SSH for hardware security. We don't need that. So yes, literally 3-4 steps you have to do on your own. And there are so many articles around it that will help you too. Now, the whole idea is once these things are saved, the SSH key is being generated, open up that SSH key in VS Code or any other editor that you want. You have to copy this and paste it at a very special place. Let me show you where that place is. I'll show you this open source contribution in a minute, but first let's go on to the new and go up here. And what you have to do is you will have exactly same kind of account. And if you go up here on the home page, this is how it looks like. And we're going to just click on this and click on the settings. You also have to do this. And you have to click on this SSH and GPG keys. And this is the place where I have to hide some stuff from my screen. So notice here, once you click on this, it gives you all these my existing keys, which I have hidden. Just click on this new SSH key and just give it a title. And we will choose the authentication key, not the sign-in key. Authentication key is fine. And just copy paste this stuff here. And that's it. Now you will be able to communicate with your GitHub account. And by the way, in case you are worrying about that, there are so many articles depicting exactly same. If you go ahead and search for it, how to add SSH key in GitHub, maybe on a Mac, you'll find so many articles. And what you'll notice in these articles, let's just say this is the Medium article, that they are pretty old. That is why I'm referring you to documentation. Look at this, 2019. Although not much have been changed, but yeah, some of the algorithms has changed. We don't use RSA anymore. That's the one thing. But if you'll notice, these are exactly extracted from the same documentation. They use just the PB copy to copy that, and that's it. Go into your window, this GitHub, it's a pretty old one. Go to the settings, go to SSH keys, simply new SSH key and copy paste it. That's it. That's it. Maybe you have to add your password. That's the max. So this is why I say this is so much important, and a lot of people are not going to be following this. But I cannot do this. The SSH keys are very sensitive. Even I have to hide some of my SSH keys on the screen itself after the post-production. This is an important step here. So now that, assuming that you have painfully gone through with this whole step of connecting and all these things, I think that's okay and all done. Now what you have to do once you're done with this, go up here, and together we're going to be working on creating a new repository, and then we will learn how we can talk to the GitHub and how we can work with that. So for that, we're going to go into a new directory. So let's just say where we are. So let's go work with that. We are in the Git 2. So let's go ahead one directory back and do a quick ls. We can go into the Git 3 now. So let's go into cd and we're going to say Git 3. There we go. Nope, my bad. Git 3. There we go. And now we are obviously into the Git 3. Let me go ahead and change my code editor's directory as well. Just give me a second. I'll drag and drop onto this one, and we are learning the Git, and we are in the Git 3. So I'm going to just drag and drop into this one here. Now we are into this fresh repository where we are having all these things. Now let's just say we are building a website and we know the workflow of it. Now only thing extra that we have to do is connect everything to the GitHub and push the things onto the Git itself. Let's go ahead and try this. I'm creating a really amazing website. I'm going to call this one as index.html. I'll use a basic HTML docs here. I'll just say Git website and a simple H1 that has some of the lorem text. That's it. That's my website. Now, how does the flow of this entire thing looks like? We have to work through with the Git. So we know that we have to initialize the Git first. And even before initializing, we would love to know the status of it. There is no Git repository here. We shouldn't be initializing it again and again. That's why I check this. And then I go ahead and say git init to initialize my Git repository. There we go. Git is being initialized. And if I go ahead and check the Git status now, it says one untracked file is there. We can quickly go ahead and do the commit. So I'm going to go ahead and say git commit. And we'll be using -am to quickly go ahead and add this. And we're going to say add index file. Looks good. All right. So, all right. Git commit. Oh, we forgot to add, but it should be done. Add index file. Nothing to be added. What happened? Should be working fine. Okay. All right. I'm going to add this. Git add. And now we should be able to, usually it works, but don't know why it doesn't work. Add index file, and there we go. Now it's being updated. Let's go ahead and check how it looks like onto this one. Let's check this one looks good. And we are on what branch? I would love to know that as well, because this will be useful in a minute. We'll be going with the Git branch. We are on the master branch. All right. Now, let's just say this is a very complex project in itself, and I want to save it on the GitHub itself. How does that looks like, and how does that process work? And do I understand this whole thing? Now, from the Git itself, you can just go ahead, click on this, and create a new repository. And we are going to call this one is learn-git. And this is available because it's unique for my account. You will be able to do exactly the same because it will be unique for your account. Then we have to provide a description, a test to learn Git. There we go. You can keep your repository public or you can keep it private. As of now, I'll keep it public, but I'm obviously going to be deleting it later on. You can go ahead and add README file. We'll talk about the README files in a minute. But git ignore, we have already worked through with that. We don't want to push the git ignore from here as well, although GitHub provides you an option to do so. We're not going to be touching licensing as of now, and I'll be just removing this. This is one plugin that I actually go ahead and use this, but it's fine. You will not have this option. This is for me, my personal professional use. All right, so we're going to go ahead and simply say create repository. Now, the moment you create a repository, you will be provided with some of the commands, and we need to talk about these commands. These are very important ones. So if you notice here, or create a new repository in the command line, we know a lot of these commands. First of all, the commands where we see all of this things like echo. Can I zoom this some more? There we go. So if you go ahead and see this echo command, it does nothing. It just creates a README file. In our case, we have this file already being created. Our index.html is already here. I'm fine with that. Then it says git init. I don't need to do it again because I have initialized my repository. I have seen so many students and beginners who mindlessly copy paste these commands. They don't understand what they are doing. That's a bad habit. You know exactly now. Then it says git add readme. So in our case, it will be add index or dot, whatever you want to use. Then it says git commit. We have also made our commit. Now this command says git branch -m main. Now don't worry, this -m is just to rename your existing branch. Git knows it very well. Just before I shared this incident that it used to be called everything as master, Git don't want that. Git want you to change this as main, although there is nothing wrong in pushing the master, but it's not an ideal situation. So we're going to use this command -m to change the branch name. Let's go ahead and do that. We just have the master, so we can just go ahead and say git branch, and we can use -M, and we can change it to the main. Suggestions are there as well. So now if I go ahead and do this and check the branch, I am on the main branch. Literally just a command to rename the branch. Now then we have something known as git remote add origin, and then this long name which is ending with the git, and then it says git push -u origin main. This is the command which is actually responsible for pushing your code, not just pushing your code, but actually to streamline your flow. Now, what is the streamline? What is this happening all up here? This is where we need to study the theoretical part of it. So let's go ahead and study the theoretical part of it. I know a lot of you are not a big fan of it, but we need to study of it. Okay. So this is the discussion regarding the GitHub. So let's go ahead and talk more about it. So Git is a software and GitHub is a service to host your Git online. As we saw, there are many other services which are available, and GitHub is known just not for hosting all of your softwares and all of your Git information online, but it's a collaboration tool. It's used for backup. It's even used for open source, and we're going to have a separate discussion on this open source stuff and how it's helpful to understand the code base and all these things. There are others as well. GitLab I showed you. There is even one more, Bitbucket. You can use that. Now, a couple of commands that are going to be coming up very handy. The first one is git clone. We'll talk about that git clone as well in the later on videos. Don't worry about that. But first of all, the most important command that we have already studied is git config --global user.name and provide your username. Similarly, you have to provide the config --global user.email and provide your email, whatever is your email. There's no such thing as you are exposing your email or something. It's okay. No worries on that. You have to do your SSH key setup, and again, remember this, GitHub doesn't allow you to push code with the password. Password-based code push is not allowed on the GitHub. Only thing you have to do is configure your SSH. It's not really hard. Try this couple of times and you will be able to succeed. This is how software development learning curve works. You don't see everything into the tutorial or videos or something. Sometimes you have to read the documentation and go through with that. Okay. Check your instruction for your OS on the GitHub website. As I showed you, this is the best and updated resource. All these resources over the time gets outdated. Whatever is the best way, recommended way is available on the GitHub website. All right. Now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the remote, because we have been working with the Git so far. We are comfortable with that on the local host on our machine. Now it's time that we move on to the remote repository. So a couple of commands that we're going to go through. First of all is remote -v. This command will help you to figure out and see that whether do you have any remote repository being set up. I have my local repository on my system. Remote repository is on the GitHub. So I need to know that whether there is any setup for that or not. And I can just verify that by saying git remote, and I can say -v as an option. And it's going to give you an empty result. Empty result simply says, hey, there is no connection. There is no remote configuration being set. And then you have to do is add the name here. So what you have to do is git remote add. That means I want to connect a remote repository. I want to have a connection with them. You have to add a name and have to add a URL. And if you notice something on the Git website, it just tells you exactly same. Git remote add, and then this is the origin, and this is the name of this whole website. And it is usually called as origin, but it's just a name. It's just a name that I'm calling it as. So on the GitHub, we are calling this as origin. That's what the name I'm adding in the remote repository. And you'll notice in the next command, it says that push, and this, I'll talk about this -u. It's a pretty interesting one, but right now just ignore this. Oh, you are not able to see this. There we go. So this is where it is. Okay. So this remote add is origin. This is the name of, you can say branch, not really correct, but you can say it as branch. So name of this repository on the GitHub is named as origin. And what I'm saying next is push into this origin from my main, from my main branch. You can change the branches as well. You can say that, hey, production, or you can say deploy branch, whatever the name is, push deploy branch to the origin. That's the most important part. A lot of people just mindlessly copy paste these commands. You don't have to do that. Okay, let's go ahead and do this. So the step one is to add, then provide a name and the URL. We are calling it as origin, but feel free to change this. The usual thing that you're going to see is git remote add origin. I don't really like to change it because everybody calls their remote repository as origin. That's what the GitHub says in the documentation. So I'm not a big advocate of changing it. So origin, and then provide the name, and usually like 99.9% of the case, this is going to end up with the .git. That's the clue of it. Then you have to simply go ahead and say git remote, and you can just go ahead and rename old name and new name. So yes, you can go ahead and rename that. There is nothing stopping you. I'm not going to do it, but I'm showing you that yes, the option exists. All you have to do is git remote rename, and then rename it from origin to Superman. Nobody's stopping you to do so. And you can go ahead and remove this as well. Git remote remove the name. So if, let's just say, you don't want to push it on the same repo, you can go ahead and change the remote name as well, and you can change and push things onto that. Now the second command that we need to discuss this, we have already got enough discussion on this one, is this one, git push -u origin main. This is interesting one. First of all, let's go ahead and add this. Now that we know this command, we can actually go ahead, and by the way, notice here it says or push an existing repo from the command line. They actually says, hey, this whole stuff you already know. Only command that you need is to add and configure your remote repository. So that's actually easiest one. And most of the time you're going to see a lot of people just come up here and copy it from here. That's why they have given this copy option directly to you, because they know people who really understand the Git, they just need this thing here. And again, you can go with the HTTP version or you can go SSH version. Most of the people prefer the HTTP version. SSH version, although we have configured SSH for authentication and pushing the code, I usually prefer the HTTP method, and they also recommend this one here. So what we can do is simply go ahead and copy this. Now we know the command. We know what's the meaning of it. We understand this command. So let's go ahead and say that git remote add, and just go with that. So we're going to say git remote add, and we're going to call this one as origin, and then paste this one. So this is what we have. Now let's go ahead and try to enter and see what happens. All right. Nothing happens. That's good news. And if I go ahead and say git remote v, now it gives me that there is an origin which we have set up. This is for fetch and this is for push. That means if I want to send any code, this is the remote repository that will be used. If I want to fetch anything, this is the remote repository that will be used. Usually they are, like again, in 99% of the case, they are the same, but hey, there's nothing stopping you to change this one as well. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the next command that we have. So remote origin is being set. Now the next one is git push. And all you have to provide is the name of the remote where I have to push and the branch name which you want to push. In our case, the remote name is origin. Hope you haven't changed it to Superman. And my branch that I'm pushing up is the main. But there is no such compulsion that you have to always push the main branch. You can push the production branch. You can push a bug fix branch. Nobody does that, but maybe you can do that. And again, we are doing is git push remote, and then the whole syntax is local branch colon a remote branch. There's no colon involved in this one. You just have to mention that. That's the whole idea. So go ahead and work with that. Now, but in our option on the GitHub, we saw one more option. This is not like I'm telling you just you can do git push and origin and main. But what this -u option comes up here. This -u option is a pretty interesting one. Let's first go ahead and do this directly. So we're going to go ahead and say git push, and we're not going to be using the -u. We'll just go ahead and say origin and main. Now, if I just go ahead and use push origin and main, notice what happens when I go ahead and hit enter. It tries to just push the code on the GitHub. All right, without -u option, we were able to push it. So what's wrong in this? Nothing actually. I can go ahead and reload here, and the whole code is being pushed, and I can see my index file and the code that I have, which is very small code. I have this code on my repository. So why we bother even about having this -u option? Let me show you that. If I open up this code file, and let's go into the code part and index file, let's open this up. Eventually, after some time, I realized I need to add paragraph of 30 words in my code, and there we go. We have added the paragraph. What do we want to do next? we obviously want to add this. So we're going to go ahead and say git add index.html. We have added this. We want to have the commit. We're going to go ahead and say git commit, and we're going to say this time we have add paragraph to code. There we go. We have committed this. So this commit is done and nice. What do we do after that? We obviously have already got the remote set, so I can check this. I don't need to do this again and again. Remote repository is set being once, or if you're updating, you can set it again, but most of the time it's just one. What if I do want to push it now? Can I push it directly? If I go ahead and say git push and no origin, no main, can I do this? It says, I don't know what you're trying to push. The current branch main has no upstream branch. Interesting. What's this upstream is? To push the current branch and set the remote as upstream, use git push -- set upstream origin main. So what's this upstream is and what do I need to know about? So whenever you are actually trying to git push, you obviously are setting a stream with some of the remote repository, and so that later on you can just push this, you have to set these options. And that's exactly what the GitHub was trying to do with all of us. So if you see this git push -u origin main, -u setups an upstream that allows you to run the future command of git push, so that you don't have to run this git push origin main again. What we are doing is we are setting an upstream. We are linking the origin with the main, so that whenever you do a push, automatically from this branch, whenever you run the command git push, it automatically links the upstream origin with the main and pushes the code on the GitHub. It will not happen on the other branches because there the upstream is not linked. That's why you are completely safe to just do this. And in fact, why would you run the command of git push there? But this is the linking process. The git push in the future will directly push the code to the GitHub. That's the whole idea. So in case you want that accidentally I should not be able to push this, don't use the -u option. But if you want that, hey, this is a little bit overwhelming for me, I'm going to go ahead and set up the upstream. You can use the set upstream option just like this. That's completely valid. But since GitHub loves this to be a little bit of the shortcut, that's why they give you -u. It's exactly the same, no changes at all. So if I go ahead and do this, it will obviously push the code, but from now onwards, what I can do is I can update more stuff. So let's just say we are going to use unordered list. We'll be having a list item, maybe 3 of them. And we're going to say home, and again, about us. And we're going to go ahead and say contact us. So we have added a navigation bar or list. Now, obviously, we want to add and commit on that. Let's go ahead and do that. We're going to say git add index file, just like this. We're going to go ahead and say git commit. And we're going to say add, what do I do? Commit, add a list. And by the way, do you know that I can actually run multiple cursors here? I don't know, I forgot the shortcuts. Yeah, there we go. So you can see I can write on the 2 places at once. This is the most amazing. So notice here. Yeah, it doesn't make sense here, but yeah, that's the option. I've never seen that in any other terminal. Anyways, having just fun with the terminal. Okay, so we have added the list. All right. And now I can literally go ahead and do git push. No option, nothing is required. These all are grayed out, they are not commands. And I can do this. It does the pushing automatically for me. So this is really nice thing to work on with. By the way, you can just go ahead and check this out. If I go ahead and do a refresh, and we're going to do index.html, and we can see, yeah, my amazing important list is now here. All right, let's go ahead and work on with this and understand a little bit more of that. So when you clone a repo, we need to learn a little bit about cloning of the repo. We'll be doing that. And we can switch the branches and all of these things. These things definitely we are going to study a little bit later on, that how we can actually fetch some of the repos, how we can bring some of the existing code on our repository, on our local system, can understand the branching and all of that. We'll understand the bit of the commands on that. But first, let me go ahead and show you some of the interesting stuff. So if you go ahead, this is how it looks like on the remote repository. Now, just like every web server picks up the index.html file, similarly, onto the GitHub, what you can do is you can add a README file. This README file has a special extension known as .md, shortcut for Markdown, And the markdown syntax, probably I'll create a crash course or something some another day. But right now, this is just your heading. So we're going to say something like this, learn about Git and GitHub. And we're going to simply say something like this. Yeah, we have to do this. And we can go ahead and add some of the code bases as well. Maybe if you don't like this, you don't have to do this. This is just fun. And I'm going to go ahead and show you that, yes, you can write codes here as well, just like this. No need of Python. All right. So this looks okay. We don't need this. Come on. There we go. So whatever you want to write in the markdown file, you can just go ahead and do this. Now let's just go ahead and add this. We're going to go ahead and add readme.md. And we're going to commit this. We're going to simply go ahead and say this, git add readme file. And I can just go ahead and simply do git push, nothing else. Once you actually go ahead and push this file, then what you're going to notice is that GitHub automatically picks up this readme file and shows you some stuff here on the home page of the repository. That's why it's required. And you can see the code that I wrote. Now you have the copy command. That's the GitHub charm of it, that they are trying to throw on top of it. But anyways, you now understand this whole thing. Now coming back onto the part where we wanted to discuss this part, that how you can bring some of the pull request and all these repositories and all these things. So there are a couple of more commands and we have to go through with this. So the first command that you're going to go through is the top one, which is this one. So you can just run the command git clone and then the URL of any repository that you want, and you can bring that code onto your system so that you can understand it better and go through with that. Let's see if we have some of the code repository and we can work with that. So I'll go onto my code base and I'll try to find something which is a little bit short and small. I'm pretty sure there are thousands of this thing. So we're going to go ahead and use something. Okay, I did made a series on Golang. Maybe you want Golang source code. So what we can do is we have so much of the source code onto this one, and I want that to see and bring all of this in here. So I'm going to go ahead and say onto the code, I can go ahead and download the zip, but since we are the Git users and we are pretty professional now, I can just go ahead and copy this HTTPS. By the way, there is SSH, GitHub CLI, other options as well. You can install the GH utility. I'll use the GitHub HTTPS method, and I can just go ahead and copy this. Now, we can clone this on wherever we like. Let's go ahead and move on to one directory back. If I do an ls, I have 1, 2, 3. We have already seen that. But I can run the command of git clone and paste this. So now whatever is there on this repository will actually be brought down. You can see it's getting downloaded. If I do a quick ls, this is one here. Notice here, Golang. I can just go ahead and open this folder up here, and this is the Golang. So entire code base is now with me, and I can open this up in my favorite editor, go ahead and work with this, and whatever I want to do, this is the code file that I have. I can go ahead and work with this. So that's the whole idea behind having this entire git clone command and all these things. But what will happen is maybe multiple people are working on the same repositories and things like that. So sometimes what happens is we need to understand this with the notes itself is, let's just say you and your friend are working on some remote repository. So there are a couple of things which we have already noticed. Now we understand this entire flow, that there is something known as working area where the work is going on. You haven't staged it, committed or anything. Then we saw that there is a staging area where we stage the changes. Staging doesn't mean commit. You haven't committed that. But once the staging area is done, we actually commit the code, and this is known as your local repo. So everything we have done so far before the GitHub introduction, that is your local repository. And once you're done with the local repository, you obviously go ahead and push the code on the GitHub. That is known as your remote repository. So all this is your limit of the working repository. This is the limit of your staging area. This is the limit of your local repository. And this is the limit of your repo. Now imagine this scenario. You and your colleague are working on the same code basis, and you are making the push directly on the GitHub. Everybody does that. There is nothing exception in that. But let's just say you are building an index file and your friend is building a navigation bar. and you realize that, hey, before pushing the index file or before pushing the footer, I would like to grab all the things which is updated on the GitHub so that I can make a fresh push onto the GitHub repo. Now you will learn a couple of commands onto that. And in fact, by the way, if you look onto this one, if I open up my VS Code, you'll see these commands. If you just click on this source control, you'll see these commands here as well. I hope you can see that there is a pull, there is a push, and there's a fetch. All these commands are here. So it's not like something alien. There's a fetch here and there's a pull here. Both of these commands actually bring the code from the connected remote repository to your code base. Not the git clone. Git clone just brings it at one at a time. But if you are actively contributing in the repository, and then the things are different. So what we have seen right now, Golang, it is just bringing the code. But here, since we are actively contributing in this remote repository, some of the other guys might have done that. So if pull and fetch both brings the updated code from the remote repository, what's the difference between them? There's a difference. Okay, when you run the command git fetch, this actually gets the info, but don't put the things in my work. So what it's doing is it just brings everything into your local repository, but hasn't brought in the work into your work area yet. When you do the git pull command, it actually gets all the information from the remote repository and moves it into your working area. And yes, there are use cases for both of them. There are scenarios where you want to just fetch. You don't want to pull it into your code base yet. Maybe you want to first verify, is it breaking my code, or is it not touching my code? Is it not overwriting my code? Once you are done with that, then you go ahead and do the git pull. Again, depends on which company you are working, what workflow you are going through. Just remember, the git fetch actually gets the info but doesn't put the things into your work, while on the git pull, it actually gets all the things. By the way, git pull is a combination command. What it does is git fetch and git merge. So yes, you get it right. All the work that you're seeing in the remote repository, you first do the git fetch, and then to bring it from here into working, you do the git merge. But most of the time, we just run the git pull. And again, git pull origin main, changes will be merged to the main branch, whatever is there in the origin. So just keep in mind, these are some of the common things that you'll be seeing. As long as you remember this whole diagram, you'll be all fine in bringing any of the code into your local repository. A couple of more discussion about the things before we go ahead. That GitHub has actually a lot more feature. I'll walk you through with some of the features. It has features like adding the collaborators. Multiple people can work on the same file. You should be the owner of the repository. README file, we have already gone through with that. Markdown, briefly touched onto this one. You can, by the way, add your own gist, whatever you call that. These are code snippets. It has options like code spaces. It has options like dev container. Let me show you where it is. So what the options are, if I go ahead and open up the same Golang, what you can do is instead of the code, you can actually run the code space as well. So what's this code space? It's kind of a VM. It's kind of a virtual machine. So, and virtual machine is not an ordinary virtual machine here. This is configured based on what kind of code you are having. So this code requires Golang setup. So it will open up a dev container or a virtual machine, which will have the configuration and the installation of the Golang. If you open up a repository in code space, which is something like React, Next.js, or some JavaScript, then it will open up the code space like that. So GitHub is a pretty more powerful tool, and you can go ahead and configure this repository however you like. I'll not go much deep into that. I've already talked about it on my channel. So no, this is not the time to talk more about it. Now, a couple of things. If you want to play more around it, I'll definitely walk through with this. Now, let me share one more incident with this So you can see on my repository, we have this open source contribution. So let me just warn you something about it before we move into the next video and talk more about on this situation. So GitHub has a way in which there are some of the code bases which are open source, and you can contribute your code onto that code base. Now people, I don't know what they were thinking, they thought that it would be really cool if I go ahead and update these small README files and put up the contribution. All these contributions are spam contribution. They are not adding something to the code. They are not putting value into the code base, and they started doing all these update README files and all of that. And the entire Express.js repository was like spammed with it. Not a good idea. So to drive the traffic in sarcasm, I said, hey, here is your open source contribution. All those who want to spam or something, just go ahead and do this. People didn't understood that sarcasm. and started to spam on this repository as well. But that was okay because it was created for this intentional purpose. And you can see I still have 220 commits. There are still pull requests and all these things. I'll walk you through how these pull requests and all these things are made. But that's okay. Just remember, you don't have to do this. Don't spam anything. If you want to contribute, add value. That's the whole idea. So anyways, I hope you have enjoyed this small talk and small lecture, not small, really big one. But now that you have gone through with the whole this thing, you don't have any fear about the Git and how the things are actually working. You are comfortable with the Git and the GitHub and how to push your code. You understand each and every command. Why does it exist? What role does it play? Is it a shortcut or how does it work? And that's my goal, to make you comfortable with the Git. That's my #1 priority. That's it for this video. Let's catch up in next video. Hey there everyone, Hitesh here, back again with another video. And how can we just conclude our Git and GitHub series without talking about open source? So I'm pretty sure that a lot of you are very much excited about open source, and a lot of you think that open source is probably a gateway of getting the job. And this is a kind of a misconception that is floating around, and I would love to talk about it. And no, I'm not denying that open source can possibly open some of the doors for you as a credential and a credibility that you can write the code and understand the large code bases. And yes, sometimes these opportunities do come around, but we need to understand the whole open source ecosystem. First of all, why I'm going to discuss about this. So if you look at this, I do myself maintain a couple of open source projects, not alone me. We have a team, maintainers, and all these people who work around it. And this is one of the biggest open source project which is growing quite a lot, and a lot of people are using this to learn. I'll talk more about this. This is not the only one. We have a couple of more which are in the pipeline, which are about to come very soon. So yes, I do have some experience with the open source of contributing in it and maintaining in it and being the founder of the open source project. So yes, I do have my credibility backing me up, and I would like to talk about it. So first and foremost, see, open source is not just about making your source code available on GitHub or Bitbucket, or it's not about that anybody can walk in and just contribute in that code. Open source is way more than this. Open source is a philosophy that, hey, software can be or should be distributed for free so that other programmers can save some time, and it's my contribution to the society, to the community of programmers. That's the whole sense of it. And I think the open source projects, whether how small it is or how big it is, should never be considered as just taken for granted. It should never happen. A lot of our software engineers who are working as a full-time job as a software engineer, as a team lead, as a CTO, they love to contribute in the ecosystem of the developers through the open source projects. They make their software, which is really amazing, the amazing software that they're releasing to the world and allowing us to just contribute in it, make the software better and add more features on that software. Now, this is a great practice, and this is widely appreciated throughout the community. And it's a good thing, but a lot of people sometimes actually take this for granted and abuse these maintainers of the project just because the software is not working the way they want it to be on some of the edge cases. And some of the people just think that this is a shortcut of getting the job, and they just mindlessly, without adding the value, contribute in these softwares. This should not be done. So in this video, I'll walk you through the entire pathway of how you can do that, how we can make the pull request, how the open source project should be read and found out about it, and all these things. I hope this video is going to be the most valuable part of the entire series, and hope you'll enjoy it. So I have prepared a kind of a roadmap for you, which you can follow, and then we're going to talk about how we can do all these collaborations and pull requests and whatnot. So here's a small roadmap which you need to understand, and these are the steps you have to follow. There is no other way. There is no shortcut for it. The step one of contributing in an open source project is talk. Yes. The first and foremost thing that you have to do before even thinking about contributing, writing any single line of code is talk to the people. You'll see that in any of the software, you'll notice here that any software that you are maintaining, this is the actual repo of the open source project. Notice here there is a tab known as issue, and you can go ahead and create a new issue and can just mark it like how do you want to get started. Maybe learners API is here, front-end contribution request, whatever that is, open a blank issue. You can just go ahead and do that. But that's your first step to talk to people. If there is a mention of the Discord server or Slack, talk to the people. We have personally seen that some of the people who were working on some of the features, they reached out to us that, hey, we have done the work entirely, our code is ready, can you accept the pull request? And we said, no, we cannot. We were not aware that you were working on it, and we have already finished our work and we are pushing it on our own. They felt really bad, but hey, we were not aware of the thing that you were actually working on this feature. If you would have been working, we would have never spent our time. We would have allotted this entire feature to you. So the step one is always and always talk to the people. I have no dreams coming about that you are working on some feature. I do know that I want to know that what you are working or what you want to work on. Without talking, there is no open source that happens. So step one is talk to them. Twitter, Discord, Slack, doesn't really matter. Talk to the founders and the maintainers of the open source project. If the reply is coming up late, don't start working on it. That's not a good idea. Then the step two is open an issue. Most of the open source project these days are living on GitHub, but if they are living on another platform, it's okay. They also have the option of opening up an issue. Unless you open up the issue, there is no way of finding. And that issue can be anything. Maybe I'm not really a big fan that you are fixing up some of the things in the README. I absolutely don't like it. But let's just say if you're doing any small modification, you're adding some functionality, open an issue that I want to work on this thing, or there is a small bug into this one, I want to fix this bug, or maybe there's some more thing I want to add onto this one. This is what I want to do. So open an issue for this one. And since you're already talking to the developer, then go ahead and get that issue assigned to you. And developers will do that. They will assign this issue to you, and they'll be taking care that, okay, somebody is working on this issue. They will give you the timeline as well that, hey, we expect that you might be done with this issue in 2 days, 10 days, whatever is the timeline, doesn't really matter. Now, once you're done with this, remember this part, which is work and add value. Now, if you're just fixing a dot in the README file, if you're just correcting the small grammar, I do understand correcting the grammar is also an important part, but you are calling yourself as a programmer, so I expect that you'll be contributing the code first and then the documentation. It's an important part. I do agree. A lot of people might pull my leg just by saying that, hey, you are saying documentation is not that important, but in the open source community, we have seen so much of the nuisance just because of the README that now we are all bitter on that. So just go ahead and work on this and add value to the project. And this is just one project like Free API, the API Hub. But there could be others as well, like Python is also open source, JavaScript V8 engine is open source. If you understand that code and you think you can add some value to it, the whole idea revolves around this highlighted part, which is add value. And yes, documentation have its own value. When you write the entire gigantic documentation, rewrite it entirely or something like that, it should have enough of the work. That's all I'm saying. Take it in the wrong way if you wish to, but all I'm saying is add value. Now, once you're done with this, make a PR, also known as pull request. I'll walk you through how the pull request is done and then iterate over it. It is not expected, and it should not be expected by you, that once you make a pull request, it will be accepted just like that. Sometimes there are conflicts, and that's common. And sometimes they want that, hey, probably this code was not up to the mark. We want you to iterate over it. We want you to add this edge case also. Maybe you need to work a little bit more. That's how things works in the software industry. Things doesn't work on the one go. So make the pull request, but be ready to iterate over it. Now, the feedback might come up in 1 day, 2 day, 10 day, because these maintainers also have their full-time job. They are also busy folks. They are maintaining it for the community. So have patience. That's the key. That's the key. Have patience and wait for it. Once you are done with this and your pull request is accepted, then hey, go ahead and go out, celebrate, because you have contributed in the community. That's it. That's it. Celebrate it, post it on Twitter, post it on LinkedIn. That's it. That's the whole idea, that I have contributed to the society. I have donated to the society. Once you donate anywhere, you don't just expect things in return. That's not the point of donation. And you're donating your code to that repository. So some people assume that making pull request is a job guarantee. I've made a pull request. I work in open source. That means I'll get a job in it. Sometimes that happens, but sometimes it doesn't happen. That's how the expectation should be. It should be just a donation. If you expect that I'm working in open source, I'm contributing in the code, that means I'll have a job. It's a job guarantee thing. No, it's not. It's not. It surely is a proof that you can understand the large code bases, and every single person who will be hiring you will be noticing very clearly that what contribution was done. is it just another spam contribution in the README file? Then obviously you will be avoided in the entire discussion of the job and salaries. But if that contribution is pretty good, you've added some code which was previously the breaking change and now it's a good one. Again, it's all good one here. So again, keep in mind, and the step one, never ever forget that talk to people. Without talking, there should not be done. All right, so this is the step, and you can see there are a lot of issues in our as well. So some of the bugs are there, some of the feature requests are there. We have also requested some of the help wanted, documentation guide if somebody wants to do it. We have bcrypt.js, some of the bugs, an enhancement, front end, help wanted. So there's a lot of things that goes on with this. And we have closed them. 35s are being closed, so we constantly close them. And you can see some of the pull requests are being made as well. Obviously, we'll go through with these pull requests, but you can see there are 2 comments on this. So we are having a back-to-back discussion on this. So PR in the draft, do you want me to review it or wait until completion? I'll let you know for review it. So this guy has made a little bit early pull request, but our maintainers are asking that, hey, this pull request seems like in draft. Do you want us to review it so that we can either merge it or can say that, hey, you need to do more work? So again, our community is pretty active, but notice here, the good part is that Sarthak, whoever is contributing here, he's communicating, he's talking to us, not making any spam pull request or something. So yeah, that's good. And notice here, resolve conflicts. So we have to work hard. We have to resolve these conflicts as well and understand the code base and whole things. But the important part is, how do we make these all pull requests and all these things? In order to make this pull request and all these things, what we have done is, I have actually went ahead and created another account from another of my email. And this is an open source test project. And again, there could be another such project. And what we're going to do is now we'll copy this, and there's nothing much in it. It's just an index file which says, hey, learn to make pull requests, and there's nothing in it. The whole point is not to write code in this series that I do in other videos, but the whole idea is to make you understand the flow of the Git. So first of all, I know this URL, so I'll just go ahead and copy this, and then I'll simply go ahead and go on to this one here. And let's go ahead and open up this one. So we'll just go ahead and add this one here. So this is something I found interesting as an open source project, that, hey, this looks pretty complex. It just grabs the email, sends the email, handles the payment, God knows what, but it's a really fairly complex project, and I want to contribute in it. Maybe I'm using it in some of my personal work and it's just failing in some of the edge cases. I want to fix them up, and not only just in my code base, I want to get it fixed on for other people's as well. So the step one is go ahead and let's fork this one. So you'll find a lot of things. By the way, you can just go ahead and download this one as well. There's no problem in it. But in order to make this pull request, I'll just go ahead and fork this. So you can see the drop down as well, that, hey, existing fork and all these things. I'll just click on this one. So what this will do is this will bring the entire source code in my account as well. The open repository name is open source, which is available. And again, you can change the name, doesn't really matter. I'm just copying and pasting. And you can copy the main branch only, but there is an option of copying other branch as well, but it's totally fine. And we are going to create a fork. That means bring all the code in our account. So I'll just go ahead and create this one. Now what this has done is it has forked the entire code base and everything in my, and this is not my code, and it is a lot of people, just walking you through, a lot of people just fork these repositories and feels like, hey, there's a lot of contribution in my account. Anybody who is experienced programmer and who is looking forward to hire you, they can immediately see how much of the work is forked and how much is your work. Now, once this is all done, let's go ahead and copy this onto our code as well. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. Let's go back and do a quick ls, and we are on to this one. And how do we bring the whole source code in this folder? Pretty easy. We can just go ahead and say git clone and paste this. And once I do this, now let me just go ahead and open this code on my VS Code. That's how you do it. Let me just go ahead and open this. And where is it? Open source. There we go. So I'll just drag and drop this folder here, and there's nothing much onto this one. Now I am assuming that, hey, there should be some significant contribution into this one. So I would love to do a contribution in this. And again, I hope you understand this point, that we are just putting a demo here. Understand, the big flash word is demo. So I think that there should be an navbar into this one. So I'll just go ahead. You might be wondering, hey, this guy adds too much of the navbar. But before we go ahead and add navbar and all these things, I would not love to go ahead and do all these things in the main branch. That's not a good idea. So if I go ahead and simply cd into this one, which is, let's go ahead and do ls first. This one is open source. So let's go ahead and we do open source. If I go ahead and say git status, that's always a good idea to run. And it says you are on the main branch. And if I go ahead and check the branch, so this is the main branch. And the good practice is you should not be troubling somebody's main branch directly. Since you're working on something else, why don't you create your own branch, bug fix, feature add, feature request, and all these things, and do your work in that branch in itself. Let's go ahead and do this. So what we're going to do is I'll just create a new branch. So I'll go ahead and say git checkout, and I'll use a -b option, and we're going to create a navbar and nav feature. Navbar is good. I'll just go ahead and call this one as navbar. Now we are onto this branch. Let's go ahead and verify. I'm in the navbar branch, and I'm going to go ahead and add a navbar .html, of course. Oops, shouldn't be a comma. Rename this, and we are going to go. Told you, my keyboard is little off. And we're going to go ahead and call this one as nav and unordered list item. And we're going to say, again, same home. We're going to go ahead and say about us and contact us. Contact us. There we go. All done, all good. Now what's the next step? Let's go ahead and push the code. We're going to go ahead and say git add, and we added a navbar.html, and we go ahead and commit this. Add navbar feature to code. It's really fun. So now this is all done, and it's pretty good that we have added and updated and all these things are good. Let's go ahead and check out the remote. This is something that we have already learned in the last video. So I'm going to go ahead and say, I want to check out git remote -v, and my origin is already being set. Why? Because I've cloned the repository. All these things are already set for me. And now what I want to do is I want to do the push. So I'm going to go ahead and do the git push. Now I know that there is a push for origin as well. So I'm going to go ahead and say origin, and on the origin, this time I want to add my branch. Just in case you missed out that, let me just go ahead and say the branch, and there we go, navbar. So what I want to do is this time I want to say git push, and on the origin, I don't want to push the main, but my branch, which is navbar. And again, as I told you in the last video, it's not always compulsory that you push the main only to the origin. You can push any branch to the origin. Let's see what happens when I go ahead and do this. Now, whatever the code that I have done is being pushed to this branch up here. Okay, again, we don't want to open or anything like that. Looks pretty good. Let's see what has happened on to this one. Let's go up here on to, let's minimize this. We don't need it much. And notice here, once I come back here and hit a refresh, sometimes you probably don't need to hit the refresh, you'll see that the navbar had recently pushed 23 seconds, and it gives me a compare and pull request. So what I've done is I have forked the repo, and I've created a new branch, and this is where I've fixed the bugs, added the feature and whatnot. Now I can go ahead and compare and pull request. The whole idea is sending the pull request means, hey, I have made some changes. I'm sending these changes to the main owner of the repository. So here everything is mine because it's a forked one, but I don't want to keep these changes with me. Probably that's the case, but in this case, I want to compare and send the pull request. So in this pull request, you have to be very, very cautious. This title and this description should be very, very thoughtfully written. Take your time. There is no hurry in it. If you take 15 minutes, if you take entire day, that's okay. This will help the maintainers to actually understand what you really want to push and what help does it making this. And notice here, you'll also notice that the base repository is a Hitesh PW1. That's my another account. And this is where I'm asking that, hey, merge my changes into your main file, in your main branch, that sensitive branch. So be very cautious what you're doing. This is sensitive work. But we are sending it from our navbar, and we are changing, merging all this thing here. So that's the whole thing. I want to send from my navbar from my open source, from Hitesh open source to whoever's I'm making this. And this could be anything like Python, maybe JavaScript V8 engine. So again, these are really the software, the backbone of the internet. Be very cautious. If you're merging something on the main, imagine how I cannot explain it words. You get the idea that it's very sensitive thing. And again, add navbar feature to the code. No, it's not a good idea. You should write it more and add the description more about it, like something like navbar added. And then just go ahead and again, by the way, you can check out the preview as well. So this is the markdown syntax again. And just write a detailed description. This detailed description of your work. And again, there should be bullet points about it, like 1, and there should be 2. So all the details that you probably want to add, this should be added. Notice here, this is how it looks like. So once you're done with this, go ahead and use the headings, bolds, italics, whatever you want. Again, write the detailed description. It should be easier to read what your code is doing. Take your time. There is no hurry in it. Once you do this, you can go ahead and create a pull request. So we're going to go ahead and make a pull request. Now this pull request is being sent. Now somebody who is going to work on this project, let's go ahead and minimize this. Now this is where I see all these pull requests. So if I go ahead and check out this, notice here there's one pull request. So this is where the whole thing comes up. Now somebody needs to go through with this and have to check, okay, this is the navbar edit, this is the detailed description, this is your entire work, looks good. Is it breaking my code? Is it not breaking? Is it adding any value to the code base or something like that? This is done nicely. I will obviously go ahead and check your commits. I'll check the diffs as well, like how the diffs is being made, what is the commit details. Everybody goes through in it and verify it manually. Okay, this is the new code that has been added. This is the new files that are being added. How many files were changed? So somebody needs to manually go through it. There is no automation for this one, and there cannot be one because it's sensitive stuff. So once I go ahead and do all the review changes and all these things, I go back to the conversation. Probably I want to ask more questions. I'll go ahead and ask you questions and all these things. Once the whole communication and everything is done, we are done with the talking and the maintainers are happy that this is an interesting one. You have done a good job. They can go ahead and merge this pull request. So I'll go ahead and say add navbar and confirm the merge. And that's where your merging happens. And that's it. Now our code base, if anybody go ahead and checks this, your very valuable code that you have added to the code base, which is navbar, is being added to this open source. And if you go ahead and check out the commits, you'll see that hey, this commit was pulling up this one here. Now if I go ahead and check out this one here, if I go ahead and refresh this, you'll notice this pull request successfully merged and closed. Somebody have done that. Now you can go ahead and delete the branch, whatever you want to do, but this is the whole entire process of making the code base and all these things. Now in case you want to just practice of how this is being done and all these things, I highly recommend to simply go ahead, if you just want to try, that's why I've created this open source, and there is one. Let me just go into my profile. And if you go ahead and check this in the repository, if you just want to have a fun with this, this is the open source contribution. A lot of people just work on it, try how the pull requests are being made. Notice here how many pull requests. I sometimes accept them, but it's not a very valuable contribution. It's just fun stuff. You want to test out things. And I understand that part, that you need also your testing itch need to be scratched. So that's there. Notice here, there's a lot of pull requests going on and people are trying that how it's being done. They also want to just try things out. And that's why this open source contribution, I don't really mind it. Don't do this spam on any other repository, just on this repository. This is made to do the spam. So go ahead and do that. No problem at all. So I hope this actually gave you an entire idea of how the open source project works up and how the contribution is being made in the open source, how the pull request work. And these are all collaborative tools being given by the GitHub itself. And GitHub issues, GitHub pull request manager and checkers. And there are a couple of others like GitHub code spaces. They are amazing tools. Even we have GitHub actions, which is moreover a part of CI/CD pipeline, a bit towards the DevOps side. We'll probably cover that in some other course or another video. But the whole point is that now you are pretty much comfortable with the Git, contributing it. My only request to you is use Git in your daily life. Until unless you start using it as a daily driver, it's not going to be much fruitful for you to watch these videos. Use it daily. That's the whole idea. That's the whole point. You have learned something, you got the knowledge, use it every day. All right, so I hope this was a pretty fun journey for you. You have understood the details, the importance of the things. You are pretty familiar with the Git now, the workflow of it. You are pretty familiar with the GitHub as well. Do let me know if this video series has helped you or you have enjoyed this. And if you have enjoyed this, do share it with others as well. It gives me immense pleasure when you share these things on Twitter, on LinkedIn. It makes me really proud that, hey, the work I'm doing as a teacher, it's reaching out really and it's helping out people. That's the thank note that you can send me, and I would be super happy with that. So that is it. That's it for the entire series of the Git and GitHub. Do watch out in the future. I'll definitely bring more series which are more complex and have another topics. I already do a lot of videos around it. So do check out my YouTube channel as well. Subscribe that, and we'll surely catch up in the next video.